Elizabeth's hat.
Mm.
Totally different than this year.
It is.
Yeah, with colors. Well, I think
All right. Mr. Gruber, are you ready? Do we have, is Alex here? Is Mr. Handlers coming today? I don't see him here yet. Okay. All right. All right. I would like to call this special meeting of the Board of the Cambria Community Services District to order. If you would all please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We do have all 5 board members present, so we do have a quorum. I'm going to start today with a brief story. It is said that on occasion when the Buddha was teaching a group of people, he found himself on the receiving end of a fierce outburst of abuse from a bystander who was for some reason very angry. The Buddha listened patiently while the stranger vented his rage. And then the Buddha said to the group and to the stranger, "If someone gives a gift to another person, who then chooses to decline it? Tell me, who then owns the gift? The giver or the person who refuses to accept the gift?" "The giver," said the group after a little bit of thought. "Any fool can see that," said the angry man. "Then it follows, does it not," said the Buddha, "whenever a person tries to abuse us or unload their anger on us, we can choose to decline or to accept the abuse, whether we make it ours or not. By our personal response to the abuse from another, we can choose who owns and keeps the bad feelings." We've got public comment first. I am going to use unless there's an objection from our district council, I am going to use the president's prerogative to allow for comment on both items on the agenda, but because it's a special meeting, we aren't taking comment on items that are not on the agenda. But there is going to be more than one time, so people can comment on the rates separately from the budget item, unless there's an objection.
Sure. So you want just 3 A's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't see Mr. Handlers here yet. He is? Oh, hi. Welcome. Great. So what we'll do is the normal procedure is we will have the presentation, then questions from the board, and then the public comment, and then discussion from the board. And we're going to start, the first item is for the rates. Mr. Handler. If you would like to comment, you should get yourself a slip. They're right in the entryway. Also, please silence your electronic devices so we don't interrupt people while they're attempting to give us their thoughts. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody again. That's right. Yes. So again, sorry if some folks have seen this before. I'll try to work through it pretty quickly. It's pretty much the same presentation we just gave a couple of days ago at the community outreach meeting, which the town hall, I guess we call it, which I know a number of the board members were there and a number of the members of the public. And honestly, I thought it was great that you had that meeting. Obviously, a lot of people have a lot of questions. They raised them. Some people, there's a contingent out there that's not a fan of the emergency water supply facility. I think everybody knows that. But, I'm just coming here kind of from a third-party perspective, regardless of what decisions were made in the past. Some people may support them, some people not. I'm trying to take an objective look at your finances getting information from your district engineer and from staff, putting together the projections based on where we see our actual revenues and expenses coming in, and determine, where do rates need to go to support the funding needs of this agency. And the funding needs include not just the ongoing operating and maintenance costs, but I'll put out there that, funding the infrastructure. You've got a lot of old infrastructure and coastal conditions. That's an inherent part of cost of service in my mind. And sure, some agencies can get by, like yourself, for some years, only doing the highest critical projects and putting the other stuff down the line. But you can't put this stuff off forever, and it often becomes even a more expensive proposition down the line to if stuff gets put off too long. But you're going through what a lot of agencies are going through right now. I'll just mention that again before I start. All up and down California, there's a lot of facilities that were put in 40, 50, 60 years ago. There's a lot of old treatment plants, a lot of old pump stations, a lot of old pipelines, and maybe they've been fine for a while and you can get by, doing as little as possible. I know you've done some projects to address some of the needs over the years. But at some point, there needs to be some reinvestment to keep those facilities in good operating condition so you can ensure you can continue to provide your water and sewer service in a safe and reliable manner in future years. So that's kind of the background. And I'll see if I can get this thing to work today. No luck. Can I tell you guys? Oh, thank you. Reposition that. Yes. If I go through something too quickly, please. That's usually not my problem, but tell me to go back. But just to start, again, here's the regional coastal communities, what they're paying for water and wastewater service. Typical monthly charge for a customer using 6 units in a bi-monthly bill, 3 units per month. Now, that's a pretty low level of use. But customers here have done an amazing job cutting back their water use in response to drought. Water use here was always low. It's even lower now. And now that the drought's over, it's bounced back up, but just a little bit from where it used to be. So people are continuing in their patterns, which is good for your water supply. So you are at the lower end of these coastal communities. No, $90 a month. Some people pay more. They use more water. Some pay less. It's not free. But compared to what a lot of agencies have been through, it looks favorable to compare to some of your neighbors. And this has no bearing on our rate study whatsoever. Everyone always wants to see the comparisons, but for my mind, they're irrelevant because it's always apples and oranges. You've got to fund your needs, regardless of what anyone else out there is doing. But so we are facing rate increases from my perspective, but so are many of these other agencies. We know Morro Bay, they already have another 19% water rate increases going in over the next 2 years. They have additional sewer rate increases they've already adopted, and they need even more sewer rate increases to fund a new water reclamation facility. Avila Beach has already adopted additional rate increases for the upcoming year, 10% water, 25% sewer. They're already a lot higher than you. Los Osos, CSD, them as well, another 25% water rate increases. So all agencies are facing increases in the area. It was kind of the point. And even though your bills are not, they're kind of in quite a moderate range compared to a lot of agencies we work from, but I know folks have been used to having low bills here for a long time, so I think that's kind of the backdrop. The only key point here I keep mentioning is, the sewer rates and the water rates fund almost all of your utility enterprise expenses. That's really your main source of revenue. So that's the underpinning of the financial security of this agency, and the financial stewardship is raising rates to fund your long-term cost of service. Background, again, folks have heard me say this. Why are we here? We were just here a few years back. We were here in 2014. We started on wastewater rate studies, but very quickly got diverted to work on the emergency water supply. The concern was that your aquifer after years of extreme drought, was running out of water and may be destroyed even if you get seawater intrusion at some level. So the real crush was to get rates in place for emergency water supply so you could secure the financing for that facility. And I know not everyone may agree with the facility, but I don't know if you had all that many alternatives at the time when you're looking at your community water supply going away. But then again, I'm not here to weigh in on that. Subsequent to that, we did come back and do the water and sewer rate studies. And the district did adopt some rate increases at the time. And there was, we looked at alternatives, and there was kind of a balance of objectives there. We're coming off a period of almost 20 years of minimal to no rate increases. There were some small rate increases in those years. But by the same token, people had cut back their water use. So a lot of folks were probably paying less than they were in 1993. When you factor inflation in that, a lot of people were paying less in current dollar terms than they did back then. Anyway, so you did do rate increases to try to stabilize the finances and provide a minimal stream for the highest critical capital needs. But at the time, I went back and I reviewed everything, even the Prop 218 notice. It was understood that this was only kind of a first step in the right direction, and you'd have to come back at some future date to address your water and sewer capital needs on a little more comprehensive basis. The other unfortunate thing is, the drought. You guys responded tremendously in this community, but it did take a financial impact because your water sales went down about 40%. Phase in the rates as gradually as possible. The water rate side, again, this is a history of your water consumption. Your water use goes up and down every other month with the billing cycles. Summertime, water use is higher. In wintertime, water use is lower. And for many years, you had kind of a typical pattern. Well, with the drought, people really cut back, and with penalties as well. People cut back their water use. Overall, it's about a 40% decline from the pre-drought levels. And I mentioned since then, we've seen a little bit of a bump back, which is normal. I see higher bump back in some other agencies, but you've only had about a 10% bump back from your drought lows. And we think this is going to be kind of a new norm. So that's what we're using in our projections, assuming that folks remain at this slightly elevated level now that the drought is over and continue to conserve. Same thing there. The current water finances, your rates do generate some money for capital projects, as was kind of the goal of the last rate study. When we look at your funding this year, it's actually generating about $250,000 for capital needs, which is better than nothing. Unfortunately, that doesn't meet your funding needs, and at the same side, you're also facing kind of understaffing on your water side, according to the operator, so there does need to be another water operator in there. So altogether, there do need to be rate increases, a little bit for the operations, but more so on the capital side. The goal was to restore your funding to a level of $700,000 per year. At the community meeting, just a couple days back, your district engineer was presenting the capital program. The total is about $6 million per year. Over the next 9 years, the average annual funding requirement is about $700,000 per year. So that's what we aim the funding towards. So we developed the financial projections. We came up with a few scenarios. I'll just skip on to the next slide if I can. We came up with 3 scenarios. Originally, we had one scenario from our working with staff and with the rates committee to try to come up with what we thought was correct. There was a request from the board that, hey, can we look at some other alternatives? So maybe you want to look at more alternatives. That's always available. There's a million alternatives out there. But we came up with 3. One is, what if you're just going to do this right up front and get your rates in place so you can start funding your capital needs right out of the gate, front load the rate increase. A second one is a phased approach, which is what we had originally proposed, where you phase it in over the next 3 years. It needs to be a little more rate increases in the early years and the later years, just to kind of get your funds up a little bit so you can start hitting some of these high-need projects. And then we had a third reduced phase-in approach. What if we tailed it back a little and didn't go to where we think we need to go for the full capital program over the next 10 years, but we went to a level instead of $700,000 a year to $500,000 per year. Even that's a significant rate increase, as folks have acknowledged, but it's a little bit less, and that would likely mean that you would have to continue to address rates in future years. So here's what the percentage increases look like. Again, I'm not a fan of percentages so much because, some agencies I work with, if they have a $100 a monthly sewer rate, their 5% rate increase, for you guys, that'd be like a 15, 20% rate increase. So anyway, the front-loaded increase worked out to be a 38% increase overnight to generate $700,000 per year starting in future years. The phased-in approach puts in a little more gradually. You also have ability, obviously, if miraculously, unexpectedly, things came in better than anticipated. We do have some agencies that adopt rates, and they ended up phasing them in over 5 years instead of 3 years. I don't want to put that out there as a likelihood, but it's always a possibility. So the phased approach kind of gets you to the same place, but a little more gradually. Then the reduced phased approach gets you to a little bit lower level of capital funding over the next few years. The other thing I'm just mentioning, this district, when we did the last rate increases, even though it was really that first rate increase was the main increase, you did adopt some additional years of inflationary increases just to keep things going. So even if you do nothing, you do have some 4% rate increases baked into the numbers, but they don't really support a lot of capital needs, as you can see there. This is what the rates look like under the Scenario B phased approach. Folks here pay, with water rates very common, the residential customers and commercial customers, there's a fixed monthly charge levied regardless if anybody uses one drop of water, and that helps recover some of the district's fixed costs. And then there's water quantity charges that are paid based on water use. Residential customers pay those quantity charges based on an inclining tier rate structure that reflects the inclining cost of service, with the rates going, from $7 in the lowest tier up to a little over $10 in the highest tier, and the commercial pays a weighted average right out of the gate. So there's parity between the two. Kind of that middle residential rate and the commercial rate, $9.19 per 100 cubic feet, translates to about $1.23 per 100 gallons, or about 1.23 cents per gallon. And that would raise up over the next 3 years to an average of about $1.70 for 100 gallons, or 1.7 cents per gallon. We have the fixed charge going up as well. I don't want to dwell on the numbers too much because it's not the most exciting stuff, but next, I just wanted to show you, to put these increases in context. Yeah, they are very significant rate increases, but they come after a period of many years of minimal increases. You did do that initial bump up a few years ago, and this would be a continuation of that trend, getting them back up to a level with a monthly charge would be about $51 per month for a customer using 6 units bi-monthly, 3 units a month. It works out about almost 70% of your residential bills are at or below this level, but certainly there are folks who use more. Long-term, short-term, it's big rate increases, but long-term works out to be that the bill at the end of these rate increases would equal the bill from back in 1993 if it had been escalated at about 4.3% per year. And I think I made some comment last time that someone duly pointed out, yeah, that's higher than inflation. It is higher than inflation, 2 point something, between 2 and 3%, I think, over those years. But what we see in the industries, inflation for water and sewer industries, is not the same as it is for, consumer price index for urban consumers, because water and sewer is very labor and very capital intensive. It's not like you're going to go switch buying from Coke to Pepsi or something like that. The other thing this factors in I want to point out is that people did cut back in their water use. Yes, it's rebounded a little bit, but people are using less than they used to. So even though the rates have gone up more than maybe this chart shows, the usage has come down. So this chart kind of accounts for everything to show what is a typical bill, what are people paying. The sustainable water facility, we talked about those rates were established in the past based on preliminary engineering cost estimates. Before the project was built, before it was operated, they needed to get the rates in place so they could secure the financing. And those rates had three components. There was, fixed and quantity charges, similar to your water rates that were going to be charged year-round to recoup costs for debt service that needs to be paid, as well as a minimal amount for maintenance. At the time it was thought there would hardly be any maintenance costs needed for keeping the facility in basic, keeping it around, although there was a little bit built into that. And then there's also operating surcharges that are levied only during periods of operation. But as we found, there's some good news and bad news with the sustainable water facility. Good news is you did get some grant funding. We're pursuing that, and we're still trying to pursue more grant funding for some additional projects that get structured appropriately. And the debt service, because of that, the debt service also came in a little bit lower than originally projected. However, the operating costs are significantly higher, just keeping that facility going. And the operations now are going to require, unfortunately, brine hauling to meet new regulatory standards from the regional board, and that's an expensive proposition. You actually have to truck when you go run your facility, it's going to kick off a high brine solution, and you're going to have to truck that down to the South County Wastewater District where you dispose it in. It's quite a high cost. Pounds below 11 cents a gallon. That's a very high cost. So, next thing is the capital improvement. In order to really get this facility in shape, yes, there's things to be doing on an emergency basis to get that facility operating right away, as I learned at the last meeting. Reappropriating certain things, running some pipes here and there. But I don't think that's what the district sees as a legitimate solution for being able to operate this facility on an emergency basis. But there are some additional projects to get this facility ready for the disease going forward. The district identified about $500,000 of high priority needs. There are other projects that have been identified in the district's capital improvement program. I think they got the number down to about 9 million, 9.5 million over the next 9-10 years. And again, our rates are not designed to, necessarily get you funding for everything you want to do right up front, but the goal again is to phase in funding so you have a funding stream that you can pick and choose the highest priority. It gets you to 600,000 a year of capital expenditures. Again, go 3 years, take some good steps in the right direction, and then you come back and reevaluate and adjust course as needed. So here are the 3 scenarios. Front loading. On the sewer side, it's a more significant rate increase. It's 64%. If you were to get your doing much investment in infrastructure some years, or just doing what you needed. There's always a downward push on rates in every community out there. But had you raised them earlier, you wouldn't need much rate increases now, but people have been paying a lot more all those years. So that difference kind of represents what folks haven't paid. Combined rate impacts, again, we try to phase it in as gradually as we could. Obviously, this puts a burden on folks out there. Maybe some folks can afford the rate increases, no problem, but you've got a lot of folks in your community, every dollar counts, a lot of folks on fixed income. And I know you've got a low-income discount program. On the sewer side, it's 40%, which is extremely high. I don't think there's one on the water side, so maybe that's something that was brought up in the community meeting, if there's anything folks on fixed income concerned about the increases, obviously. We project that with the rate increases, yes, they're big increases, but at the end of the day, you're going to end up in the lower middle to middle range compared to other coastal communities, just as a comparison. And we're also projecting with these rate increases that long-term, once you establish an adequate funding stream, you wouldn't be looking at more and more and more rate increases in future years. It'd be more of, hey, we got them to a stable place. Now we can, do something more on an inflationary level, unless the Regional Board or Coastal Commission mandates you do some expensive project, and they certainly have for some other local communities. Okay, here's where we show the impacts, and again, it's a lot of numbers on the table here, but this is scenario A. Get your rates up to the full cost of service overnight. The top is the water, the middle sustainable water facility, and bottom the monthly sewer charge. Again, that's the typical customer at 6 units by monthly use, which represents a little over 2/3 of your residential bills. Right now, folks pay about $37 a month for water if they're using this level. I know some less, some may pay a lot more if they're using a lot more water, and that would go up to $51 a month. The sustainable water facility charges are going from $12.50 to $18.35, about a $6 increase over 3 years. But again, there's an elimination of that emergency surcharge because there is some funding provided here for a couple of months of operations. And if you found that you never needed to use this facility, it's possible you can cut the rates down once you build up some minimal buffer that you can have in case you actually needed to use it. The sewer, right now, it works out to be about $41 a month. That would go up to about $67 a month over 3 years. All combined, the bi-monthly bill goes from $180 to about $273. On a monthly basis, it's a charge of $90 right now for water and sewer and sustainable water facility, going to a total of $136 over 3 years. Now that's the scenario A. Scenario B gets you to pretty much the same place. It just phases it in over 3 years. And then we wanted to show you, if with just next year's rate increase, what scenario B looks like, understanding it's never fair to compare your future rates against everyone else's current rates, but if we do that on this table here, you'd still be in the lower range. Yeah, you have more rate increases going, but so do a number of these other agencies. And here's scenario C, which is a reduced scenario that we wanted to show that still provides, some reasonable level of capital funding, but not as much as the district would like. It may mean that you need more rate increases in future years because you do certainly have the capital needs out there. So with this, the rates would go, instead of, I think it was like $51 a month, the water charge would go up to $48. The sustainable water facility charge, we just have one alternative. Again, that might be able to phase in a little bit slower. And the sewer rates would go up a little bit less than the other alternatives. So step in the process is. No formal action on rates being taken tonight, but keeping the ball moving in the right direction, I think, is the plan.
All right.
Thank you.
We're going to first have just questions, not discussion, but questions from the board for clarifications. Does anybody have questions for clarification? Director Pearson?
Excuse me. Thank you. Very nice presentation again. I'm sure you're getting tired of going over this over.
I'm sure you are, actually.
My one question is, have you done the calculation on the sustainable water facility, what the monthly rate would be if we kept that charge, that we would only charge that when the
keep it similar to the way it is now.
Yes. Have you calculated that out to?
I don't think I have that at my fingertips or in our numbers, but it'd be very easy to do. There still would need to be an increase in the ongoing charges. I think that's the main thing.
But it'd be
and we could evaluate. Yeah, it wouldn't be as much because a chunk of it is providing some funding for the operating costs. Because your sustainable water facility, there's zero fund reserves right now. It's kind of at the edge of its financial sustainability.
When we get to the budget. But if you could do that for us, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Director, Vice President Barron.
Yes, at the meeting the other night, someone asked about the 4% increases. This is going to supersede any.
Yes.
In the event this passes, it's superseded. Right?
Yeah, I should have clarified that. These new rates that we're proposing are, they do away with the 4% and take you to higher levels. It's not in addition, so it's superseding the other rates.
Okay, and also I understand at the open house, or at the, town hall, that when we had the 218 last time, the construction was about $12 million was in that 218 notice. I think some of it was contingent, but yes, we were getting a loan.
For the sustainable water facility.
Yes, that construction wasn't inflated since then. That was what we thought it would cost. Hopefully it would cost less, but it cost that much.
No, the facility came in lower than what the projection had been.
Mm-hmm.
And you got some grant financing, and the debt service came in a little bit lower. So that was, on one hand, a reduction, but on the other hand, there are some, it wasn't foreseen at the time that there would be more ongoing operating costs just to keep that facility ready to roll when you need it.
In an option B, was there a repayment, any money repaying that $450,000 or $60,000 loan that was put out there?
Oh, good question. Yeah, the sewer fund, you're talking about the sewer fund?
Part, yeah.
The sewer fund, it's been out of money, and it's had to rely on the general fund to fund some critical projects because the money just wasn't there. And yeah, we did build that in. We built in a repayment, not overnight. I think we did like a 5.5, 6 year repayment, starting in year like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you would pay that back over time, roughly $100,000 a year. So it cuts down what your capital funding is for some years, but when it's over, it might free up a little funding for capital needs in later years.
And I believe the logic you used for having rather than having it only when it's running, there's an advantage to, if we don't run it for a couple of years, we will build up a small amount of funds. Then all of a sudden we have to run it and it's more costly. At least we have some banked funds in order to do it. Whereas your logic, and you're the professional, also would say that since we're not building up anything, if all of a sudden we had to run it for some reason, the jump would be quite large, and we'd probably have to come up with another way of funding it.
Yeah, and it's also hard. That's an excellent point you just made there. That's exactly right. The sustainable water facility is zero fund reserves. It's not sustainable. It's not financially sustainable.
Right.
Yeah, the thought was that instead, and due to problems with the application, it's hard because it's mid-bid billing cycle. You're going to turn this thing on. Who's going to get billed? How much? It's hard to know. And also, maybe the damage is already done from the prior use, from the prior 3 months.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, you're going to kick the charge in September, October, because the rains haven't come back yet. And the people who drew down the aquifer never had a paying for the use. So it's a little bit of a mistiming, which is why we were,
Right.
I know we talked about some alternatives also.
I like that
with the
logic,
committee,
and
but there's
also,
no perfect answer.
and
for this
also
stuff.
some people want the tourists to pay it all, and at least the tourists will be paying some of it, so.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Okay.
And that's what I'm
Thank you.
saying, if you charge it and you never had to run that facility, after a few years, you have a little bit of fund reserves, you may be comfortable dropping the rates down, because you knew you had something in case you had to turn that facility on.
Thank you.
Right now, you have nothing.
I have a clarification on page 14 of your presentation where you have the different phased increase scenarios.
Yeah.
It says on the water rate side, it says the amount of the CIP funding that would be available, like, for example, in B, it says $250,000 in funding.
Yeah, I think we're going to pull that up here in 1 second. I see them.
Yeah. Here's the basic question that I have. You said the prior rates covered for the water side cover about $250,000 for capital as opposed to operating.
Yeah, based on
the current rates is set
they
up.
do, without factoring in any additional water operations staff or anything like that. I mean, at this
Currently,
point in
it
time,
generates about $250,000.
you're generating about $250,000 for capital, but some of that
Page
it really
14.
probably should be on operating.
So then my question is then that 250,000 is in addition to the 250,000?
No, I mean, some of that 250,000 is going away next year because you have, whatever it's increased PERS retirement costs or electricity. So there's always cost inflation going on. And there's also some staffing that's being phased in over 3 years that's kind of eating away some of that 250,000. So that 250,000
So by the
next
time
year
we
would be
get to
less.
So by the time we get to 2020 at the 700,000, no matter what the approach is, unless we go with the 500,000 one, if we go to the 700,000, that 250,000 is essentially not included in that.
That's part of it, yeah.
That's part of that.
So that's the total
not
generating for
700
capital.
additional.
No, yeah, that's
Okay.
total being generated for capital after you fund all your operating costs.
And that's each year, which says
Annual.
to me we would need to put in some policies about if we don't spend it every year. But there's
And most agencies don't. I mean, I've been working with a lot of agencies who have been doing this exact thing, trying to phase in a funding stream. And some years they may have to spend $3 million, the next year $200,000. So it may be a lumpy expenditures as you design projects. The design phase might be cheap, the construction high. But the goal is you've got that funding stream to take on stuff as you need it.
okay. Other questions from board members? Director Farmer.
I don't know, it's kind of a combination question, comment type of thing. So you just forward to page 19 in your presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you. So where it says, debt service costs, the second line there, debt service costs are lower than originally projected. I don't know if that's because we got a little bit of grant funding, but somehow paying $660,000 a year over 20 years, it seems like, lower. I mean, that's a considerable amount of money. But where it says ongoing operating costs are substantially higher than projected. And who knows what's on the horizon. Obviously, decommissioning the brine pond was somewhat unanticipated. But we just have no idea what the ongoing costs are going to be of this facility, even when it's not operating. And also here, current rates generate no funding for SWF capital improvement needs. And so I guess I'm thinking, well, this is a brand new facility. The fact that it would need improving when it isn't even operating and it's relatively brand new, I guess that's just, like I say, it's semantics. And then if you drop down to page 20.
Can I just mention that The capital projects needed are not to the facility, it's to things related to the facility. For example, the regional board said you can't just, you have to start hauling this brine away if you're going to
Right.
operate this. Well, in order to do that, there have to be some other external improvements made, not to your new facility, but to, the pond and the pumping, and you're kind of under the whims of,
yeah,
as you
I
know,
understand.
you know better than I do. Yeah, okay.
I understand. Like I said in the beginning, it's as much a matter of semantics than it's anything else. So somehow, to me, improvements aren't the word that I would use to cover that. But that's just me. Okay.
Fair enough. Yep. And you're right. The debt service, it may be less than we projected, but it's still significant, and folks are going to be paying it every month or every billing cycle for 20 years.
A town of 6,000 people, not all of them ratepayers, obviously, paying this amount of money every year for, the next 17 years. Anyway, going on to page 20, where it says down here, SWF rate recommendations, rate increases needed to support operating and capital needs. Once again, just to point out, the facility isn't operating. Some people are out there under the misapprehension that we are gaining something from this facility with regard to our water needs, but that hasn't been happening. So I just wanted to clarify that for anyone out there and that's viewing or something like that, and or listening. And I guess I could hold off on other things until we get to the budget.
But I'd just like to respond to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, General Manager Gruber. On the operating side, even when it's not generating water through the reverse osmosis, there's testing and other operational things that our staff has to be doing, even when it's not making water, so to speak. No.
That's correct, including the generation of reports and things
So
like that.
so there is operations even if it's not making water. It's just that it's not making water, but it keeps it ready so that we can prevent damage to the aquifer or seawater intrusion, prevent our wells going dry, whatever things are for the reliability of the water supply, right?
That's correct.
But there's no water going through it. I understand that, but
that's-
would you say that's still operating costs even though it's not operating?
Yes, because there's...
We're using operating, I think, in two different ways is part of the issue here, I think,
Yeah,
semantics.
I could change it to maintenance or something like that. I mean, it's...
Well, we
But you're right,
want to just be
semantics,
clear,
yeah,
we want to
it
be
could be
clear about
misleading.
what I need to be clear
Yeah.
for myself. I don't want to implement rates that I'm not clear about what it's supposed to be paying for.
But the other side, I did want to say that the proposed rates do include the 2 months of brine hauling operation kind of built into the base rate. So there is some, in addition to the base maintenance cost, there is, some operating costs in there
Thank you.
included.
Director Farmer, did you have another question?
Let me just make this comment, and maybe it goes under the budget as much as anything. But considering what the capital improvements are that are needed for the wastewater facility, which is essentially roughly $1 million a year for the next 8 years or so, it's really difficult. I just want people to understand, no matter what rate increase is implemented, or what phased-in rate increase is implemented, we're still really in very difficult straits with regard to attending to the needs of the wastewater facility. I just want people to know that.
Okay, I think we can go to
The other directors,
public
yeah,
comment,
ask
and
my
then
questions.
public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the board. And we'll have you respond to any questions, if you could just take notes if people have questions. Is that okay?
Sure,
After we finish through
Sure.
all of it. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we go to public comment?
Me? No.
Yeah, okay. All right, first up is going to be Tony Church, followed by Donald Archer. Welcome.
Thank
You
you.
will have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, directors. My name is Tony Church, and I am a Cambria resident. I concur with Donald Archer and believe that a pause is necessary before a decision is made on rates. I also believe, no matter which of the 3 proposals you are considering, that there is a very high probability that as a result of a 2 18, you will fail, wasting both time, energy, and most importantly, money. I also accept that an increase beyond the 4% that is already on the books is necessary. Our wastewater treatment plant and our infrastructure is in desperate need. However, what has been proposed, even the third option, is too extreme, and I urge you to reconsider. I suggest a new rate plan that mothballs the EWF be taken into account. It will allot only minimal expenditure on EWF maintenance to ensure that it continues to be viable in an emergency, but contain a concrete assurance that no further money be expended on the EWF, not even in pursuit of a regular coastal permit at this point in time. In this way, you may be able to gain enough support from residents to acquire the money, allowing you to deal with the other issues as a matter of urgency. I would also like the rates to be considered by the standing committees before you take any action. The standing committees were put into place for that very reason, I believe. I also don't think anything has been taken into consideration. If you put the rates up under the first option, that in fact water usage will go down and your revenues will go down. I don't see any mention of that. People will resort to what they were doing in the drought, and you will be losing money. So please consider all these factors. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Donald Archer, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Thank you, Donald Archer. President Rice, Vice President Beringer, and members of the board. At the town meeting on Tuesday, I suggested the following: press the pause button and take a deep breath. We're in over our heads. Bad decisions have been made, bad contracts signed, priorities skewed, and promises unkept. As Mr. Handlers has suggested, the fault does not primarily rest with this current board. It has inherited the unfortunate results of years of inaction and mismanagement by previous boards and administrations with the general consent of an ill-informed and unrealistic constituent. Today, we continue to be misled and mismanaged. Why, for example, has the CCSD been assessed fines and late fees for administrative negligence? That is unacceptable. That is not a prudent way to spend our money, and it's not exactly confidence building. The EWS is still the elephant in the room. Its acquisition and operating costs are siphoning millions of dollars from the district's essential services: water delivery, water storage, and wastewater treatment infrastructure, resulting in little money to upgrade our aging systems and little public will to raise rates. As it is, we can't use it, and its operating costs are unsustainable. Likewise, many of us cannot afford the proposed rate hikes, which gets to my next question. In considering these new rate hikes, what do we have to show for the last ones? What significant improvements have been made? Where has that money gone? As much as many of us would like, apparently we can't decommission the flawed EWS unit, sell it to an entity that actually can afford it, use that money to pay off the debt, invest in the desperately needed infrastructure improvements, and lease a portable, state-of-the-art water emergency treatment system that is as necessary. That was suggested in the beginning, and we didn't follow through. That's because we don't own the EWS. Thanks to a terrible contract, primarily benefiting the bank, but not the district, which again begs the question, what about mismanagement? What choices do we have now? I, for one, don't want to keep tossing hard-earned cash down a rabbit hole or into an abyss. Can I just finish? It's time to press the pause button and take a deep breath and regroup. We are in over our heads, and we continue to spin our wheels. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Tina Dickinson, I know we had a town hall on Tuesday. If we could just keep it a little more business-like today, I'd appreciate it, because I want people to be able to feel comfortable coming to the lectern and speaking their minds. Thank you, Ms. Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. This is now the third PowerPoint presentation I have watched by Mr. Handler, and it doesn't get better with every time that I watch it. It just gets worse, actually. And I'm going to repeat what I said at the town hall meeting, that at the July 13th hearing of the Regional Water Quality Control Board last year, of which the board was present and some members of the public, the chair of that board, Dr. Jean-Pierre Wolf, said this: "If I had known then what I know now, the district would never have received a Title 22 or Title 27 permit." That is Title 27, the evaporation pond. Title 22 is for the facility itself. The district made a gigantic mistake when they chose this project. You can't just rush to judgment, folks, on a multi-million dollar project. You can't, and with multiple problems that you were warned about before it was even built, but never listened, or during the process of it being built. And it isn't a new project. It's almost 4 years old. We still don't have a regular CDP. But to come to the community again in the middle of a 5-year rate increase, and we have had actually in 10 years several rate increases, I think it begs the question, we aren't doing anything wrong. What has admin done wrong, and possibly this board and previous boards for sure? But nothing comes out as an apology about what you guys may have done wrong, but we're paying the piper. But we're not going to pay the piper anymore if I have anything to do with. I'm ready for Prop 218, and I think many people in this community are. I want to ask a couple of things on the proposed rates. They're based on the EWF or EWS running for just 2 months per year. I don't know how that factors really into what's being proposed with rates. I mean, if you're just running it for 2 months a year, where are those costs identified truly if it's just for 2 months a year? It assumes that $500,000 is needed for brine hauling and CDP requirements, but yet doesn't provide the basis for that figure. It could be lower or it could be substantially higher. I don't see that in the presentation that has been given to us. So again, last time, 2016, the first thing that came out of that rate increase were 11% salary increases for admin and for the fire chief, the top folks, 11%. So my Social Security check was supposed to get a 2% increase, zip, because Medicare took everything. So we can't afford this. It's unaffordable. Like Mr. Archer said, put the pause button on, and Mr. Church said the same thing. Really think this through. We need to hold off on the EWS, and we need to deal with the infrastructure issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. You can also do this. That's what they do at the Coastal Commission instead of applauding. I do appreciate knowing that people here support what's being said. That's definitely helpful. Crosby Swartz, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen. Welcome.
Madam President and members of the board, I'm Crosby Swartz. I'd like to follow up on Director Pearson's request to calculate what the SWF operating surcharge would be if it was not eliminated. This is very important. Our water supply and our aquifers are heavily dependent on rainfall, as you know, and one of the things that makes it difficult is you never know when the rains are going to start at the end of each year. And if the well levels are below what they should be, or if the rainfall is late coming, you're going to need to run, first of all, you're probably going to need to go to emergency conservation measures and run the new facility probably 24 hours a day. And you can't say that that couldn't happen, because if the rainfall is a month late or 2 months late, you're going to have to run this thing full bore, 24 hours a day. There are no provisions in the proposed rates for the brine hauling, no provisions that I can see for the operator's salaries either. And it's not like you can just defer these costs. If you need to run it to keep the wells alive, you need to run it. So I strongly think you need to really consider keeping the operating surcharge and figuring out what it needs to be. I guess that's basically what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Barbara Roche.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm glad to be here, and I hope that you find edification in the comments by the public. I really welcome the new website. It's my favorite program these days on TV is on PBS. It's called History Detectives, and the new website is competition with, I'm not sure, as good a plot line or characters, but on the other hand, it's interesting to look at the CSD website and try to find stuff. I thank Monique, because she has said we can certainly comment with suggestions, and I'm sure mine will be taken into account just like they were with the last website. The Barlow Wells study provides very many numbers and charts. As Mr. Handler said last night, we have almost an infinite number of tables. This is true. But the numbers do not necessarily answer a basic question for you, which you face today, because I'm sure you're going to have a substantive discussion. And the question is, why? The new format for the budget improves the reporting of expenditures and revenues, certainly, but the format does not enable or ensure discussion by the board of these substantive questions. What and where are clear, but not why. The introductory letter recounts numerical details, but does not answer a particular question. Why? You could undo a wonderful thing that you have done. You have appointed standing committees on finance and infrastructure. No board has had the guts to do that in years. You have. But now you are going to take the very actions which will make them so transparent that they are what? Invisible. Their work won't count. And you said you wanted to have them, but no, you aren't. You're going to discount the standing committees. It's full of experts. I've not been able to attend the meetings for various reasons, but on the other hand, I listen to them because Ms. Dean is kind enough to tape them, and they are excellent meetings. Even if the chair of one of the committees of infrastructure said at one point you didn't want to be on that committee. I can verify that textually if you like, sir. I am not a fan of Henry Kissinger. I haven't been for years. But the current issue of the Atlantic magazine has a short column by Henry Kissinger on artificial intelligence. It scares the bejesus out of him. But I want to read one paragraph from Henry to you. A growing percentage of human activity will, within a measurable time period, be driven by AI, artificial intelligence algorithms. But these algorithms, I'm going to read this, I'm sorry, I've missed meetings. But these algorithms, being mathematical interpretations of observed data, do not explain the underlying reality that produces them. Paradoxically, as the world becomes more transparent, it will also become increasingly mysterious. And that, dear CCSD Board of Directors, is what is happening right now when we get hundreds of pages of documentation, and you know what? We could not ever tell anybody with any veracity what are the presuppositions that the Board of Directors brings to their work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Barbara Roche, followed by Dawn Howell.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Roche. I'm a full-time resident of Cambria since 1999. I don't have the knowledge that a lot of the people here have because I have not attended these meetings, nor have I read the reports that you've put out. However, in today's presentation, it's okay? In today's presentation, I picked up a couple of things that I would like to get clarified. Let me make a statement first that in the presentation, it seemed that what we were dealing here was revenue based on expenses as opposed to expenses based on revenue. And I am wondering if the water scenario A, B, and C and the wastewater scenario A, B, and C are independent or are codependent. In other words, if you decide on scenario B for water, could you decide on scenario A for wastewater? Or is it totally scenario A, B, or C for both? And I just have a question on that. So I'm finished, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, and we'll get you an answer to that. Dawn Howell, followed by Samuel Shalhoub.
Thank you. I'll start with the dead horse. The EWS, the SWF, this is very quick. I just want to remind folks that you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And also, we need to remember the concept of not throwing good money after bad. Those are hard decisions to make, but I think they need to be brought forth. Now, I concur with several of the speakers here and kind of wondering, what is the hurry? Why are we doing this now? You have a balanced budget brought for you for your discussion, so I'm not quite clear as to what the rush in this is. Indeed, I think to allow the standing committees to do more work, each one is, I believe, only met 3 times, and that's 2 hours a time, except possibly for finance, 6 hours or something. But it's a huge, as you all know, and as the general manager knows, this district is very complex, and it has a lot of stuff happening. The CIP list is hugely long. So it's well to give the community time to learn about these and to give their input. So I strongly urge you to pause. However, if the board were at this time, excuse me, to propose a rate increase such as what we are seeing, I would have to say, I'm sorry to say I could not support it for the reasons which I think you all have already heard. However, I could support a rate increase to support the sewer system. What the consultant has said is absolutely true. I've been here 24 years. I've watched this thing. I took the sewer tour. There has been incredible neglect on that. Now, my feeling is that it's probably for two reasons. One is, of course, we really don't like to talk about sewage. And I would like to point out to my friends in the community that you cannot have a community of this size and density if you don't have an operational sewage system. We might as well pick up and move somewhere else. So that is incredibly important. We know that there will be a tremendous increase just for that because there has been so much deferred maintenance. So I just wanted to remind people of that, and it is important. And as I say, the reason perhaps is that it's just not that interesting to deal with. The other thing, very briefly, if I can talk quickly enough, is here. I don't think we need sorry, folks. Sorry. I don't think we need to allow for hidden motives or other things in order to explain how we got to this point. Back in between 2007 to 2013, there were 3 sanitary overflows of the sewer. Quoting from a document, the settlement by the Water Board, I noticed that in each of the 3 cases, this is my last sentence, in each of the 3 cases, there were 2 common things to all these 3 sanitary overflows. One, neglect. We've talked about that. The other is failure to provide reports. And this was from 2011. That suggests to me that, well, Everyone's intentions may be good. There has been a failure to adequately and properly supervise the general manager. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Samuel Shalhoub, followed by Laura Swartz. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, esteemed board and staff. I just want to thank you for, especially you, President Rice, for having town hall meetings and allowing the public to truly express their opinions. I would advocate for what the community has been saying, and I would advocate for you all to listen. Boards of directors have a fiduciary responsibility to your stakeholders. When the stakeholders demand that you take a step back and you look at the numbers, I think that that's something to take in consideration. I understand that moving forward on renovating our infrastructure and solving some of these issues is time sensitive, and that's understandable. I think we all agree that maintaining our infrastructure is a primary concern. However, if I may just advocate for the sense that the proposals being provided by the analyst are, good, I suppose, but the board itself and you, President Rice, have the ability to amend those proposals and actually propose your own. So I would suggest that instead of just having 3 options and making a decision and having the public fight you, that the board itself generate alternative proposals that you all will stand behind that represent the voice of the people. I'm sure that we can afford to pay some increase in our rates, but the board has to show that it will be spent responsibly and that there's accountability for where those funds are going. Last year around this time, there was an idea of purchasing the old Cambria library and addition for repairs. Now we're looking at, negligence of repairing facilities and so on. I mean, really, can we respect the decisions being made? I'm not sure. 1 year ago, you're asking, we're going to try and purchase a building. Now you're saying we need to raise rates to improve the infrastructure. I understand that these are different issues, but it all kind of ties into the same point. How can the community respect the decisions being made? How can the community believe in the leadership if what we're seeing here are proposals for rate increases, proposals to purchase land and real estate, but there's no accountability behind it. So please hold yourselves accountable. Take your position on the board with as much respect and responsibility that we would like to hold in you. I believe you'll have the public's respect if you were to truly listen, adapt, and respond to the public need. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Laura Swartz, followed by Claudia Harmon-Worthen. Don't make me break out my gavel, please.
Thank you. He's a tough act to follow. Okay, I'm just going to read this. I'm not a public speaker by trade. And what I say is good afternoon. You can't? Is that better? Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Like I said, good afternoon, fellow Cambrians, and that includes the board members and the staff. The word pause has been widely used at the special meeting that I attended 2 days ago. Pause is a good word. Not stop, not rush through as usual, but pause. We are entitled to know why these rate hikes are needed to this extent. Why must we impact our low-income members and those that subsidize them, our people on fixed incomes, and everybody else? We have a standing financial committee that hasn't reviewed the rate hikes or made suggestions yet. I was at that last meeting and it lasted 4 hours and we didn't get to that part. So the standing committee, we need their input before acting, or are they here just for visual effect? My opinion are the rates need to go up because spending is up. You ask on what? Okay, the infrastructure repairs, yes, for function and for safety, I agree with that. I think we all do. But we have a very large capital improvement that needs to be itemized, not put in the general category of the Water Enterprise Fund. We, the public, are entitled to know in simple terms what has and will be spent on the EWS if we are told to fund it continually. The charts provided don't inform us of the allocated overhead, accurate labor costs, fines, consultants, or the purpose of the $500,000 loan needed from the general fund to sustain it. Many, many more dollars are needed to continue if we're going to continue on this path. Pause. If the EWS stays as the EWS improves itself in function and provides the amounts of water needed, when needed, and all costs are disclosed, then it's the time to proceed and spend more money on that. But when the EWS changes into a run as needed as the board's discretion, you're looking at another $25 million plus to be paid by the ratepayers because of the BRP. So we need to be aware of money. We deserve to know and control spending before we rush as usual. But the town population, and that includes all of us, we have the responsibility to stay informed and to make wise decisions. Safety and function, yes. Unexplained excessive funding, no. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Folks, please, I just ask for that little bit of respect. I appreciate that you're supportive of the speakers. I would like to, Ms. Dickinson, please.
They're being supportive. I think that's fair.
There may be people here that have a different view that wouldn't feel welcomed, though, at the lectern, and that's my concern.
Well, they don't have to clap. My name is Claudia Harmon Worth, and I've been here.
Uno momento, please.
No
After
problema.
you is Jerry McKinnon, and let me reset the clock for you so you have some time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're done. No,
like you did on Tuesday? You cut me off. That was not very nice. I will go back to the $35,000 that's being paid to this consultant. And I think the problem I have with his figures is that where do they get them? Where does he get these numbers? And do you have the statistics? Do you have this all written out, like exactly how much a nut and a bolt and a whatever, a pipe and all that? Do you have that? Do you have those figures? I mean, really, can you answer that question?
We'll answer the questions. Why don't you go through your entire...
Okay. That to me is a big one, because I really doubt the figures you have are correct. One of the things that goes back to when I was on the Land Use Committee, we had a site visit at the what was the emergency water system. It was before you had the blowers put in, and they were talking about that. And I told Bob Gresham, I said, don't put those blowers in, because you should just make another pond and just have more evaporation, because it's really bad ideas. Oh, no, it'll be more expensive, he's told me. It'll be more expensive to put in another evaporation pond. Look at the mess we have. We bought those blowers. By the way, I talked to the salesman who sold the CSD those blowers, and I asked him why he sold them to us, because on all their materials, they're not put on the edge of a pond. They're put in the middle of a pond. They're put in an area that isn't next to ESHA. And so I asked about that, and he said he was told to sell those blowers to the CCSD because his boss told him to do it, because they wanted the sale. He knew they were going to be put in incorrectly. They knew they were wrong for our community, but he sold them to us anyway. I bamboozled, okay? So that's one of the first things that happened with the desal plant that has caused us to be in this fiasco. I don't like it when the consultant compares us to other communities. We're not like other communities, and it's an insult. I think if you hire Bartle and Wales or someone else, that they should understand our community and be able to give us related figures that really make sense for us. Okay. And, okay. Okay, that's about it. I think I agree with Mr. Shalhoub. You need to scrutinize the figures. I think you need to come up with some of your own figures. And if you created these subcommittees, the infrastructure and the finance committees, why aren't you listening to them? They're the ones that are sitting there and crunching the numbers for you. I don't get it. You're just going to plow through this and ignore all the work that they have done. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Jerry McKinnon is my last request to speak.
Jerry McKinnon, once again, I thank you for the coffee. Excellent. Keeps me awake. What I have experienced today are speakers who have prepared speeches. I'm just a simple-minded sailor. All I know is there's a leak in the boat. We got to fix it. I don't care right now who made the leak in the bottom of the boat. I just want that leak fixed. But I don't want it fixed with a hammer and a nail and a piece of board. You got to have the right stuff to fix the leak in the bottom of the boat. Now, there's the past and the present and the future. From the past to the present, it can very well be dominated by unintended consequences. People who make decisions not realizing what probably or what possibly could happen between then and now. So we got to be careful of unintended consequences. I once again am reminded that prior to the CSD coming into existence, there was raw sewage running down the streets of what became Cambria later on. I do not want that raw sewage running down the streets. It's like a leak in the bottom of the boat. We got to fix that, and you did. 1978 and 79, the sewer plant was put in. And now we're up against it again. There's a possibility that the sewer plant might go afoul, and we got to fix that leak before it develops into some consequence that we didn't expect. I'm depending upon the men who are hired to do the job, in fact, to do the job. I'm intending on those of you who are elected with responsible positions to do your job. I'm dependent upon you, and I'm dependent upon them. I want the leak in the bottom of the boat fixed. I want the leak in the sewer plant fixed before, in fact, it does become a problem. Money? Hey, if you live in Cambria, you can accord 50 cents a day. I mean, after all, we got a problem, and we got to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That was my last request to speak. We did have some questions that I'd like to have Mr. Handlers address, and before he does that, one of the things I want to speak to is that the amount of the total bill in 2020, if you look at the total bill that will be happening in your mailbox every 2 months, oh, I'm out of time, is only 14% of the total amount that you're going to be paying. The other thing I did, because I've been on the rates committee since I joined this board, and I have participated in the rate increases over those years, including when we split apart the regular water and sewer rate increase to do just the separate EWS, because I thought it was important that the public be able to speak to, excuse me, folks, I'm sorry. I don't like it when you interrupt speakers, including me. And so a lot of it, I feel responsible because I am partially responsible having been on the rates committee, and I wanted to have that EWS charge split apart so people could voice their opinion about paying for that operational addition to our system. I also went back after Tuesday night when I heard people saying, so what did we get for the last rate increase? What can you point to that we paid for? When I looked at it, the amount of money we put in for capital improvements was, and I will take whatever responsibility as an individual is my responsibility for. We didn't want to make it a huge rate increase. We said, let's kick the can down the road on funding those infrastructure projects that need to be accomplished. We'll do another rate increase in a couple of years that will include those. So there wasn't money in those rate increases to cover infrastructure improvements. not any kind of major ones. And maybe Mr. Handler can speak to that, I don't know. But I did go back and look at all of my charts that we used as the ad hoc committee through those rate increases. So I've been listening, and I think that I still feel there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen, but I want to reassure you that there's a lot of discussion to be had. Mr. Handler, do you want to answer those few questions that folks had?
Yeah, and I apologize if I missed one. Remind me I missed them. I took a lot of notes there. Where to start? I guess there was some concern, maybe the rates weren't evaluated by your committees. Just for fair, we have been working with the committee since at least February, I know we have. And so this has been an ongoing process, not unlike other studies we worked for. We have gotten a lot of good input. Can there be more? Sure, you can always provide more. And one of the members of the public mentioned that we're just showing 3 rate increases here, and the board should come up with its own. I want to say what we're coming up with is not me going to my office and saying, here's what you have to do. It was done in consultation with staff and with the rates committee and receiving input, and we came up with initially what we thought was an initial approach to get input. We got some more input from the board. We came up with a reduced one. Maybe people want to see other alternatives. But that's the point I wanted to make there. There are many alternatives out there, and we're certainly, happy to make anything the board wants to take a look at, whether it's tweak. One woman had a point, hey, are you stuck picking A, B, or C? And the answer is no. You can pick sewer rates B, water rates C, anything you want to do, you can do, as you already know, I believe. Someone brought up that the water use, if you raise rates, water use goes down, the revenues go down. Well, that's certainly what happened here. And that's kind of what the underpinnings for the last rate study was really designed to kind of stop the financial hemorrhaging and stabilize things. And even though it didn't address the big capital needs, the goal was to a little bit of funding for some of the highest priority stuff, which kind of brings you where we are today. And there was discussion about doing more rate increases back then. But no one ever likes rate increases. We understand that. Sounds like a lot of folks here understand there do need to be things done to the infrastructure. At the same time, there's some maybe hesitations and other decisions that have been made. They want to make sure every dollar is being used wisely and efficiently, and it's certainly a legitimate point to make. Someone made a comment about the loans, that you got stuck with a bad loan. I am a financial advisor. I've done, many dollars of bonds, bank loans, helped agencies get, federal, state funding programs. At the time when you were going out for that loan, you didn't have a lot of good options out there. Your credit coming with the, deficits and things like that, it didn't look, and the water supply running out, there's a lot of real credit concerns from a bank or a lender, but they did competitively bid it out. And they got, at the end of the day, which I thought was reasonable. Yes, it has some more provisions in there than might be for a AAA rated water agency, but at the end of the day, the terms of that didn't seem that bad from my perspective of someone who's been in the industry. You do have to pay it off over time, and maybe at some point you could refinance it down the line. So yeah, it's maybe not the best loan ever, but it's not a bad one, so as I would classify it. Yeah, someone mentioned that there, I guess there's no winning sometimes. There were some comments, hey, we didn't see the details that really support this. And then I also got a comment, hey, you're burying us in too many tables. We can't follow it. And honestly, we do try to come up with a balance there. I try to methodically work through this stuff. So if you look through these tables, you can go from table A to B to C to D, see what the numbers are. Where do they come from? They certainly don't come from me. They come from working with staff, getting your budgets, looking at the financial history of what's been happening in recent years, the actuals as well, looking at your water use, at what the revenues are coming in. And we do put in the effort to try to make sure the numbers that are going into our rate studies are as accurate as possible. Granted, no one has a perfect crystal ball looking to the future. May some things be a little different, Sure, might you have a vacancy some year? Might your electricity costs go up unanticipated? Of course, that's the case. That's why I always see these rates as, these rate studies as, you need to take steps moving in the right direction, come back, reevaluate, reset course. That's what happened last time. We're at that point now. We're kind of reevaluating, realizing, yeah, we got some stuff accomplished, but we still have more challenges. So that's really the design of this one, to kind of take the next steps. Maybe at the end of the day, you don't want to fully take all those steps to get there, and I can understand that, but maybe you do, and you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because if you don't address the needs, they don't go away, and you keep you may end up spending more for them, having more leaks and breaks and things like that. If you do, you face the wrath of folks who don't want rate increases, and I'll tell you, nobody wants rate increases for virtually every community I've worked with. There was someone brought up about keeping the O&M surcharge, and Director Pearson mentioned looking at that option. I will come back with one of those alternatives, and maybe there's some medium in the both, coming up with some kind of blended approach there to give you some protection in case you do need to run it for 4 months straight. So we will come back with something, and we'll talk to the rates committee and get their input on that as well. Yeah, there are a lot of tables and charts, but when I said there's an infinite amount, I wasn't referring to the number of tables and charts, because this is pretty standard for a water and sewer rate study. We want to be able to document everything so someone can get out there and not say, hey, where'd these numbers come from? We're showing you where the numbers are come from. What I meant when I said infinite, I was referring to the infinite possibilities with rates. You have to go from here to here, whether you go slower now, more later, more aggressive now. There's many different ways of getting from here to there. There's no perfect answer, but it is important, I always think, for agencies to take steps in the right direction. It might not always be where you should be taking steps, and but you got to keep things moving in the right direction, or you fall further behind. Yeah, a lot of comments. Obviously, that sustainable water facility there's a contingency out there that's not a fan of it. We understand that. I can't do anything about that. But some things, the decisions were made in the past, for better or for worse. You have a reality you're dealing with now, and that was really my job, I think, to come here and try to objectively assess where your finances are and where they need to go. We can't change what happened in the past, and maybe some things look like bad decisions at some point, and then you have a drought, and you need that facility for the next 5 years, and folks all of a sudden are appreciative that they have it. I don't know. All right. Someone brought up, and I think a very fair point, they don't like seeing these comparisons with other agencies. And honestly, as I mentioned earlier, I only do that because it seems like every agency wants to see where do we stack up against the other folks out there. But as I did mention, it's never apples to apples. We have no idea when other agencies, if they're charging less, does that mean they're super efficient, or does that mean they're not doing their capital needs, or they're facing a different reality with their water supply? You never know, but we just put it in there, just kind of people want to see where they are in a benchmark, because it seems like every agency I work with thinks their rates are the highest. And then when you show them, well, maybe you're not. You're certainly higher than some, but you're less than others. I work with many agencies that already have rates higher than where these rates are going. But we do put them out there just so folks can see the comparisons. But I think it's a fair comment. They really have no meaning from my perspective. It's other than comparative. I think I addressed most of them. I apologize if I missed some folks' comments. So if there's any more questions, we're happy to try to answer.
I just have a quick question, and I don't know if it's a quick answer or not. The CIP is a 10-year timeline, and the rates are being implemented over 3 years to get to the amount that we need to have. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit? The time mismatch?
Yeah, for example, when you look at your sewer capital improvement program, I know it's been honed, it's been revised. It's got about $9 million over the next 10 years, and that's in current dollars. So you think, okay, $900,000 per year. Okay, well, really the capital projects, there's some things you need to do in the front end and other stuff you can accomplish down the line. So kind of the goal was this is, maybe we're not generating the full amount to do the whole program, but we're trying to generate to phase in so that your rates are supporting a funding stream that you can use to address the capital needs over time and pick and choose what you think is the highest priority. Some years you may spend less, other years you might save up and spend more, but you need that funding stream as part of your rates in my mind, because reinvesting in infrastructure, it's a long-term process.
So we wouldn't want to just fund the projects that are going to be happening in the next 3 years. That is the timeline, the horizon of the rate study.
Well, unfortunately, we're not doing that. The only way you can do that is if you were to raise the rates, front load them, so you're all of a sudden generating a lot of cash funding, or you could try to take on some debt financing and spread the costs over time, which sounds like that's an answer, but well, no, it's not, because you still have the whole funding stream in the future. I generally don't like seeing debt unless you've got some big spike in capital needs. What you have is a long-term ongoing funding needs for your infrastructure. Yeah, there's some higher priority stuff that happens in the near term, but the goal is we're trying to come up with a balance here that you can't do everything you want to do, but at least you're taking steps to get that funding stream in place so you can address stuff over time. It doesn't fully fund everything that may have been identified for the next 3 years, so some stuff may have to be delayed a little bit, but at least you're going to be able to plan to accomplish the highest priority stuff if your rates are supporting some funding stream for capital needs.
And then the last question that I have is on when we did the last time around, and I think this was on a draft, so I don't think it was part of what was implemented. We built in a certain amount per year to pay back a loan that was like a 10-year loan or something that would have been a private bank loan or a bond or whatever, 15-year loan. Could we do the same thing and then have it be money that comes from the general fund that then gets paid back so that we could kind of extend the amount of, I don't know if that would make enough of a difference in the rates to make.
No, you certainly can. If you had some immediate higher level of funding needs than your rates were generating each year, you've got a couple alternatives. One, if you have fund reserves, now your sewer fund has none, it's in the negative.
Right.
Your sustainable water facility, emergency water supply, there's no pile of cash sitting there. Your water fund does have a little bit of reserves, so you can always dip into reserves on a temporary basis, or borrow from your general fund if you wanted to and pay it back over 10 years. That might be a way of front-loading some additional funding to take that on. And I think we did build in a little bit of that in our numbers with the sustainable water facility, because there are some near-term projects that were identified that ostensibly need to happen before you can meet the regional board's muster for operating that facility, other than some kind of emergency, temporary thing. So there's no money for capital needs in your sustainable water supply, so you very likely, if you did anything, would have to temporarily rely on your general fund for a small amount and, pay it back over future years. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Vice President Berenger.
If we had anything in the general fund to start funding, that would be...
I was just, it was a solution that we had looked at the last time.
Right, and I think, Alex, you were saying that if you were to start day one at the $700,000 that we need for wastewater, we'd have to have a tremendous increase starting right now, if we tried to pay it in cash starting now.
It would be a painful one-time rate increase. There are periodically, on rare occasion, agencies that I'm surprised that that's the approach they want, the rip the Band-Aid off approach, and we'll get there overnight, get it over with, they think, but it would be, a large one-time increase on folks.
And I think Director Farmer and I also were looking at more like $800,000 to start, and it's clear that that's not going to be funded if we have a balanced budget. And we would have loved, I think the board's plan was to have you here much earlier in the year, and I think we're 6 months farther down than we should have been before. And just to reiterate, once we put out a Prop 218, these numbers are general numbers $700,000 at the end of 3 years. I'm just using one number that you're talking about. And committees can take that CIP and they can move money from here and there, and they can change the budget. We can't, if we have a Prop 218 out there, we can't ask for more, but the committees could cut it down, or we can implement a lower rate. So the 218 that would go out really is the worst case scenario, and individuals and committees can work on the details. After it's complete, they can still work on details, what gets funded and what doesn't get funded. So the ongoing committees that are going to last, I believe, for years, of the Finance Committee and the Infrastructure Committee, that input is a continuous and ongoing basis. Is that kind of what you're saying?
You're 100% correct, yeah. So, the Prop 218 kind of establishes the maximum rates. Then it comes back to the board, and you've got to adopt something to actually get it in the books. You could adopt something at or below. And even if you adopted something, you can always decrease the rates.
Right. And another thing, there's a suggestion, and this is the one that I'm having the biggest trouble with, and that is that what if we run it more than we were supposed to? I think that we could, as a board, if we declared a stage 3 emergency and we wanted to implement surcharges to pay for just the use of the committee, we can just do that by resolution. We don't need that with a 218. So if we need extra funds for some reason, we can always adopt that outside of the rates that we've done as far as a surcharge, like we did during the drought. Is that correct? If it's not a simple answer to the question, I would want to defer to your legal counsel for their take on it. But yeah, if you had some kind of emergency, the water code does provide for some sort of, emergency penalty charges and something like that. Generally, we like to, we recommend it to really cover your bases. If it is going to be an ongoing charge, it might happen in future years, that, the Prop 218 process is probably the cleanest way to do it, but certainly there's many agencies in California during the drought that adopted, emergency surcharges, penalties, and stuff like that without going through the 218 process. But some attorneys aren't comfortable doing it that way. Yeah.
That also just kind of backfills the money that you're not getting from the reduction in water use in a way. So
I wouldn't recommend that. That's as an emergency situation. If you want to adopt some kind of penalties under the water code, I think that's allowable, but it wouldn't be my first recommendation for dealing with your emergency water supply.
other discussion, because we're on the slideshow, the discussion was the level of the rate increases. I'm looking at page 38 of the presentation. It says issues for board direction. Level of the rate increases to include in the Prop 218, effective date for the increases, when they'll go into effect and be on the bills, and setting a time and date for the public hearing. I think the first step is going to be, we have heard from quite a few people that maybe this needs to be put on pause, referred to committee, to allow for more examination of the underlying justifications and provide more information to the public. But I would like to hear how the board feels about that position.
All right, go ahead.
You want me to start?
Okay.
The Finance and Infrastructure Committees have been meeting. The Finance Committee has met 3 times, and I think we're making great progress on providing transparency to the community and trying to do a very good job of looking at all the finances of the community. We did not get to study the rates in great detail. We did study the budget that's next on the agenda for 2018-2019 fiscal year. And while we were doing so, we naturally were discussing the rate increase that was coming along, because the budget that we are going to be looking at next is really not balanced. It's got some very small numbers in there for maintenance and repairs on the wastewater side. It does fund some capital improvements, both on the wastewater side and the water side, but not nearly what we need to do. It also doesn't fund really an assessment of those two systems that we really need to do in order to make sure that we're doing the right things downstream. So we need to get this rate increase done as quickly really as possible. I don't think there's anybody on the Finance Committee that would disagree with the fact that we need a rate increase. And it may be debatable as to how much, but I think everyone on that committee believes we need a rate increase, and it needs to be substantial enough to cover the capital improvement program that the Infrastructure Committee has basically sent over to the Finance Committee, and that was what we were going to start looking at. Personally, I think both committees have done a great job already. We have on the table a joint meeting that we would be having in July, and I think that meeting will drive a lot of discussion and a lot of transparency again as far as what the money will be spent for that will be coming up that will be generated by the rate increase, and that will allow us in future years to be in a better financial condition. I'd also like to say at this time that I think the Finance Committee, when they looked at the budget, were very tough on the staff and saying, you're spending too much here and you're spending too much there. And maybe that wasn't done in the past, but I know that the current people on the Finance Committee are very aware that we need to do that and will continue to do that whether I remain on the board or not. So I yield the floor.
Yes, and I think that I have a tremendous amount of frustration, and if we don't move forward with some additional, with a rate increase, we won't be able to get any loans to accelerate this project. We need to have these rates happen this year and be in place. I think that I like Plan B for a lot of reasons. One, it was the first one we saw, and the public has seen it for the long period, for the most amount of time. There's not a big departure between A, B, and C. The numbers that are in there aren't adequate for real CIP uses, but there's some there. I think it's phased in, and I think we have an opportunity, and I think I would like to accelerate the opportunity for the good opposition, if they feel so, to reject it if they don't like it. With that said, I'd move that we schedule a hearing date for the rates that are indicated in option B, prepared professionally by Bartles and Wells. That's a motion.
Is there a second to that motion, and then we'll have discussion?
I'll second that motion.
Motion made by Vice President Behringer and seconded by Director Pearson to move the rates in option B. Is that scenario B?
That's correct. And schedule a hearing date
set a hearing date,
which will be a different motion on the date, et cetera, after
with
legal
the
counsel.
staff recommended implementation date of September 1st.
Yes, in the rates.
Is that part of your motion, or you want to make that a separate motion?
With the option B, with the study assumption that rates would be increased in the September timeframe.
Okay. So does everyone understand the motion? Is there discussion on the motion? Director Wharton.
Yeah, I agreed with Director Pearson and Director Behringer that something does need to happen. I'm also hesitant on the pause situation. I'm hearing that. But we need to act now if not soon. And how long is a pause? I've not heard that really, a definition of that, or what's the end goal of a pause? Is it to kick it to the Finance Committee and come up with our own rates? But I think Mr. Handler suggested that we could come up with our own rates that we not exceed. So is this also, are we going with Plan B on this to be the highest rates that we could implement, and then we could, if we want to go half of that, we could do that as well?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I also want to make it clear that, I've talked to people out in the public, and they're concerned about that this being a blank check, and I do not want this to be a blank check to the general manager just to spend. I would like to see a list of, hey, this is where the first monies are going to go to, this is where the second monies are going to go to. I think trust is built by communication, and if that level of communication, we just can't hand a blank check over. I think we need to have some oversight on that as well. And also, just another comment that, to me, the SWF is insurance, and like insurance, it doesn't get used all the time. We don't ask for a refund on our insurance premiums because we didn't file a claim with AAA or whatever. So that's how I view the SWF, is it's an insurance policy for we can run it when we need it. Thank you.
Director Farmer.
Thank you. One of the things that I've observed here during the course of this meeting, and I think at one point the fluorescent lights were dimmed. I believe it was a Jerry McKinnon suggestion, so you folks could see what was going on the screen a little more clearly. You're probably unaware of the fact that the fluorescent lights, right above us here, haven't been on. I think the ones in the back kind of recently came on, but between that and the fact that Ms. Bettenhausen, who usually wears something very colorful, I think we're all aware of that, a beige hat and flowing colors from the back of it, and is, very expressive. Today she wore, shades of gray and black. Personally, I think what many people in public comment alluded to, I think Mr. Shalhoub said it most eloquently. What's needed first, and I'm not discounting the fact, and I think people know how I feel about the need to fund improvements at the wastewater facility especially, but until we can show, and let me also phrase this, and I know people are aware of this, I just want to kind of define where we're at as a board now compared to when I was elected a year and a half ago. We have 2 new members on this board. We have 2 standing committees. The approach that this board is taking at meetings is much different than it used to be in the past. The opportunity to be more, let's say, more open. I hesitate to use the word transparency. But I believe essentially there's more honesty and a deeper concern for being forward-looking as to how we address the issues here at the board. However, as Mr. Shalhoub said, what first has to happen is that the community be able to gain a certain amount of trust in the decision-making of this board and the decision-making of management. There hasn't been a lot of faith in this area, in these areas by members of this community. I believe that's one of the reasons that I got elected. And I believe until I would first put off making any kind of decision on this rate increase until we have this special meeting on July 12th. But I believe until we as a board and management and staff can show that we're moving in a direction that is a healthier one with regard to how the monies are being spent, and like I say, the community can have faith and trust in us, I'm really reluctant to approve anything at this moment. Thank you.
I would like to respond to a couple of the things that Director Wharton said, or almost said. One of which is how much of a pause, and I was also moved by the eloquency of Mr. Shalhoub and several other people who have spoken to, let's not rush headlong, and I've been on this board when we've rushed headlong. Library comes to mind, the advanced water treatment plant loan comes to mind. It's not fun to be on the other end of one of those situations, and taking a pause, to me, doesn't mean we wait another year. It means we take a step back, because I believe that the alternative is a very organized protest that would probably succeed in not allowing us to get rates implemented. And back in 2007, when that happened, it took them until 2009 to get anything put in place. I don't want to see us get paused involuntarily for that length of time, because it would require us to go, because you've got the time of the 45 days. So I don't think that a 2-year pause is a good idea. I definitely think that it might be worth it to provide, especially to those folks who are especially interested and informed, to provide them with the into the weeds details they're asking for. I also like your comment regarding some accountability for ensuring that we can show where that money is actually, what projects are we what's going to be in next year's budget that isn't right now. And I do agree with the finance committees. Essentially, they didn't put it like this, but I kind of see the balanced budget as kind of a fictional budget in a way, because you can't have zero expenses for some of these things that are currently zero, so the numbers work out. Having just the numbers work out doesn't really make it a balanced budget. It makes it an interesting imaginary exercise. So I think there's a way to have a pause that still gets us in this fiscal year having a rate increase. And I think that it would allow for us to not make the mistake of rushing headlong and having a protest that succeeds on behalf of the citizens. I think it's important we listen to, and it's not just the folks who came here today. I've seen some faces both on Tuesday and today that I haven't ever seen at a live meeting, and I'm so thankful for that, and I want to take that input seriously. There's also a lot of other conversations that are happening. And I think that Director Farmer is right, that it's about having confidence in the board that we're not doing things willy-nilly. Now, the Rates Ad Hoc Committee was made up of the chair of the Infrastructure Committee and me, who has been on the Rates Committee forever and ever, and I am on the Finance Committee. And so we brought those conversations from those committees into the rates discussions that we've been having with staff and the consultant. So I don't want people to think that it was just done without any kind of anything. We definitely made sure that staff had provided the information to the consultant so that they could come up with something good. But I'm going to stop there, and Director Wharton, and then Vice President Berenger, and then Director Farmer.
Okay.
In regard to the pausing, like Director Pearson, how long would the Finance Committee need to consider this? Are we looking at another marathon 6-hour meeting? Are we looking at a couple sessions? What's a realistic timeline so we don't get like what President Rice was suggesting, that we're just kicking this down the road and suddenly it's 2 years gone and there's been no action?
Yeah, I think that the joint meeting that we're considering having, on July 12th between the Infrastructure Committee and the Finance Committee can basically go through the rates and the CIP and get a very good feel for what's going to happen. Now, as far as executing a plan for the next 9 years, I think that's going to take, more study, et cetera, that we can't wait for, because we've got budget issues this year that we have to take care of. So we have to get the rates passed this, I would say within the next 6 months at least, okay, not passed, but in place within the next 6 months, or we're going to have real budget problems just this coming fiscal year. So I don't want to delay. I don't want to delay any time past September 1st unless somebody's got some really great reason why we're going to all of a sudden do more work.
Okay, so Jim made the motion, you seconded it, so you're in favor of these going forward, I'm assuming. And then we're going to have this meeting on July 12th. And then we can really look at so we can raise the rates to where they are in Section B, because that's what we're going to be voting on. That could be the highest that we're going to go on. But if the committee meets on July 12th and any subsequent meetings going forward, can we then pull those rates back down to where that level that the Finance Committee and the Infrastructure Committee says is great? That way we at least have something going forward to address the immediate needs, but then we can kind of back that down. Is that kind of what you're suggesting? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think that works, okay? Plan B would be the maximum that we would go to, but we would be able to back that off. Now, Plan B is based on the ad hoc committees getting together and looking at the overall finances, and they came up with the best thing that they could at that point. So it's probably pretty close to what we probably need to do, but more investigation is fine, and I think we could do that in July.
Thanks for the clarification on that.
Vice President Barron.
If I might comment, I think that for real transparency, I hope that these ad hoc committees are going to be around for a long time. I hope that the ad hoc committees really, or the standing committees, I'm sorry, the standing committees will be such that once if the rates are implemented, that they do cross all the T's, dot all the I's, we get public input, and the finance committees are determining different alternatives on how to spend the money, and I think the CCSD should spend the money based upon the results of these continuing infrastructure committees and finance committees. So the participation of the public would only begin on the 12th, and if we wanted to have something again 2 weeks after that, we could probably do that too. But we have an opportunity to set a date, we have an opportunity to start the process, and we have an opportunity to continue to engage that would be the intent and the envision of the way we would proceed. And I think that essentially is what we need to do.
Director Farmer?
Yes, I definitely appreciate what Vice President Barnger just said, because I know there have been points in recent memory where he was maybe a little bit reluctant with regard to how far in the future these standing committees would go, especially the one for infrastructure. So I'm glad to hear that he's realizing, or at least reevaluating the fact that having these standing committees is of a real benefit for the board, for staff, and of course for the community. What I would like, and I believe President Rice said this a little bit a while ago, that the current rate increase that we have right now isn't addressing the needs of infrastructure. Now, maybe I misunderstood what she said, but what I would like to know is, and perhaps staff can get back to us at a future date, like maybe at the meeting on July 12th or at the next regular meeting on the 28th, where and how has the money from the current rate increase been spent? I mean, I personally would like to know. If it hasn't been spent on infrastructure, which to me is the main need of this district right now and the community, I'd like to know where that money has been spent and why. I think, and the community needs, it's their money. They probably need to know that too. And I certainly would feel, I wouldn't feel comfortable moving forward with a rate increase, not knowing how the current one is being utilized to the benefit of the ratepayers and the needs of the district. Thank you.
Madam President, may I?
Yes, Mr. Gruber.
I think it's detailed pretty well in the 17-18 budget that we have right now. It shows.
Which is going to be coming up.
Yeah. No, this is 18-19, but with regards to
this year's
President or Director Farmers, we could spend a great deal of time on that, but as you indicated, as part of the rate structure committee, when we addressed rates 3 years ago, especially from the wastewater side, we pretty much deferred and we decided not to raise rates to support any of the capital projects. So the last rates that Director Farmer are referring to were minimal, and the expenditures and the revenues match up as part of the last 3 years' budgets, and we can show where those monies have been spent. With regards to this rate study, there was an intentional process to marry, if you will, the CIP list, the water and wastewater CIP list. Somebody had asked his comment, where do these figures come from? These figures are derived from those CIP lists. Because one thing that I haven't heard mentioned here is that Alex Handlers was hired to do a comprehensive rate study, but also a 10-year financial plan, and that's essentially what he's done. That's a component of this. And that 10-year financial plan is also derived from the CIP list that goes out 10 years. So it's all married and it's all interconnected, and there's a nexus between them. Is it perfect? Can it be revised at some future point? Absolutely. I don't necessarily know, unless the board directs staff to do that I want to spend a lot of time on looking at the past rates and trying to figure out in the last 3 years where that money has been spent. I know that it's a good question, but a lot of it is in direct costs and indirect costs. If you recall, we're at the end of a labor contract right now, and for 3 years, and the board was gracious enough to give MCE, IAFF, and SCIU 11% raise. Percentage of it went there. The operating costs that Alex refers to from a CIP perspective for water and wastewater is a real cost. That is a real cost that's encumbered by any water or wastewater agency, and that's a 4 to 5% raise every year in electricity and chemicals and staffing and all those things. So those are real costs, but I'm rambling on, but
okay. So then I'll cut you off in that case. So I'm going to say this. We're going to take a vote in a minute, and I'm going to recommend that the directors consider voting no, and here's why. When we passed the rate increase in at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, we said 4% a year, but every year the board would look at it. It wouldn't just be an automatic increase, and that's kind of what it became. When we do this and we send out a Prop 218, those are the numbers that are going to be implemented. And when the committees look at it and decide it's going to be lower without a specific mechanism built in that requires the board's approval for any other increase in any future year, that promise was not followed through with on this other increase that happened. And I don't want to see that happen again. I think that we could have the meeting on July 12th, which I know is still kind of in the works. And following that meeting, I'm talking about less than a month of a pause. Following that meeting, I would be then more comfortable sending out a Prop 218 notice that has rates, even if they are these rates. Because 2 of us is not as good as 10 of us. I mean, just in the reality. I think that Mr. Handlers has done some really good work. Our staff has put in a lot of effort in putting in the numbers so that they can be plugged in to do what needs to be done. I think a pause is appropriate, at least until we don't need to be rushing this so much so that we can't go forward a month from now, we would still be able to implement rates before mid-year. We could put them in place before January, even if we wanted, even if we delay a month. It doesn't push us back too far. So that's my recommendation. And unless there's further Vice President Berger?
I would like to ask District Council and staff, if you've prepared we can set this date farther than 45 days, or we could delay issuing the 218 notice. So if we wanted to implement this by September, what would be I think we're going to have another vote, really, because it's not in the motion, when the hearing date's going to be. So what have you prepared, and what are your thoughts as far as timing?
Well, the notice period's 45 days, and it would probably take staff, and I defer to Alex on this, probably a week, 5 days to a week to prepare the notice. So figure 50 to 52 days lead time.
Okay, let's say he prepared the notice now, so that it would be available on the 12th or the 13th. So the 13th of July, so mid-July,
So it would be
August,
late August.
Yeah, I think the 12th's probably pushing it. Am I right about that, Alex? The 12th is probably pushing it to make September 1st the effective date of the increase. It's just not going to work. We have to come back, and you have to actually adopt the rate increase once we clear the 218 hurdle. So there's a buffer in there as well. So you need lead time to prepare, you need 45 days, and then you need to have a meeting after your success. It can be that very same meeting in order to approve it.
So,
just really quickly through the President, we also need time to, from a billing perspective, to work with moms to automate the new rate structure within the existing financial software. So there's a lot of moving pieces. That shouldn't take too terribly long. We won't have Tyler Encode online by then, but those are just some things, and we would want to do a test batch, what they call, is to make sure that that the system is, functioning properly with those new rate structures. So those are just some variables I wanted to explain to the board. Whatever the board decides to do.
Okay, but so you're saying if we miss another two-month billing cycle, it's important. I think I would propose that we.
Well, we can take the vote. I mean, I gave my reasons why I think that directors should want to vote, but you should vote the way that you think is the right.
To move forward, and then the date is another discussion.
Okay. So let's have a roll call vote. Is everybody clear on what the motion is, including the district clerk? Director Pearson, did you have something?
You can comment. Okay.
Director Farmer?
I'd like some clarification on what the motion is. Thank you.
Okay, I move that we select option B and set a hearing date to implement those rates.
On September 1st.
With a September 1st start date. Because that's what's in the presentation. That's what all the figures, and that's all of this, the numbers are all based upon that.
So staff recommendation.
And staff recommendation, there you go.
All right, let's have a roll call, please.
Vice President Berenger?
Aye.
Director Pearson? No. Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
No.
President Rice?
No. So I would entertain another motion on this item.
Well, again, I would like to move this forward as quickly as possible. Your billing cycle you won't have to worry about billing until after the 2 months is up. So the rates go into effect September 1st, right? But you won't be billing for that until 2 months later.
We have stopped accounts that we would have to bill. So we have a flexibility of a couple of days, yeah. I think we could get it implemented within 7 days. So.
No.
So when you have a stopped account, you bill them at the current rate. So if the rates are adopted on September 1st, somebody stops on September 1st or September 2nd or the 3rd, you
I
bill
see.
them for that period of time.
I see, okay.
So we would have to get the rates implemented before we could stop any bills
When,
or accounts.
when do the bills go out for
For
September
September,
usage?
October goes out November.
Well, you have plenty of time to bill.
No, but she's talking about somebody who stops their account because they move or whatever. Those people are
Or in the zone.
in the zone because they won't have, they
Yeah,
could
but
be
it-
your test case.
Yeah, they
We
could be
we
your
can hold
test
their
case.
accounts, it's just
Sure.
that customers don't like that very much.
Well,
But we don't matter.
well, what we could do is make a administrative accommodation for something like that. I mean, that's the,
Yeah,
so if we're not billing.
it wouldn't take a long time, I'm just saying it would take.
So
a long
let
time.
me reiterate, I think that the rates should go, we're going to lose a lot of money if we don't have the rates starting in September. And now that you have a couple of months to bill that, as you read those meters, I still move that we adopt the second, I don't know if I'm going to get a second on this one, but we adopt the option B so that the rates can become effective in September, and set a hearing date so that the rates can become effective for the September usage, as staff
Well,
recommended. So
is there a second?
That's my motion.
Okay, so that dies for lack of second. I move that we look at this at our July full board meeting. That gives a chance for the two committees to meet and have this item specifically to send out the Prop 218 notice, to set the rates that will go in the Prop 218 notice, to go out and set the hearing date at the July meeting, which might mean that we don't implement until, say, the November, December billing period, but we've only lost one billing period, which is way better than losing 2 years because we get a protest that succeeds.
As part of the discussion,
I need a second before we have the discussion. Is there a second for that, to put this item on the July board meeting?
Yeah, I'll second that.
So second. Vice President Berger?
can we have the rates effective October, since we read the town twice monthly? Is that a possibility, staff? Or would that be a total nightmare?
Maybe if we go tonight.
It could be possible, but it's probably problematic.
We don't want to create a lot of problems either, so
We already
I
have
understand.
multiple tiers in
I
our billing
understand.
system.
Yeah, I know.
And we want to be sensitive when we do, if, whatever the result of this is, but assuming it is successful, we want to be sensitive to when those first set of bills go out, that we do everything we can to make sure they're accurate.
I'll support that.
Could go to monthly billing. Yes?
Could we have the joint meeting and then have a special meeting 2 or 3 days later?
Yes.
In order to do this?
I
and set the date
would accept
and
that as
still
a
get it
friendly
done?
amendment.
I like that one.
If we have that joint meeting on the 12th,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I think we need to prepare those two committees for a 4-hour meeting and not
Right.
a 2-hour meeting.
Right.
And then on the 14th or the 15th, have a short meeting just to get the resolution done and get it set and get the date set, et cetera, et cetera. I think we can get it all done by September 1st then.
Mr. Carmel?
With the understanding that those rates wouldn't go into effect until November 1st.
Why?
Because we need a 45-day
There
notice
has to be a
period.
notice period of 45 days.
Right, and the notice has to go out, be prepared, go out.
If we were to do it today, what's the date that we would have to set the earliest date we could set the hearing date?
How long does it take to prepare the notice?
To meet a September 1st schedule, you'd have to have your public hearing, I'm going to say August 31st. 45 days before that, looks like it's about July 16th or so. Maybe it's July 17th. It's a 31-day month. So you'd have to have your notices in the mail by the 16th or 17th, which is, I think, it might be
quick, tight turnaround.
But if the notice...
possible. It is possible. I mean,
Right,
if you have
because if
everything
if we
there is a
approved it
draft
today,
notice,
we would turn around
the
and
mailing
do
list
it.
can be pulled around. We've worked with some mailing houses that have, if they're, prepped in advance, they're ready to go. And it's not like your list is, 100,000 mailers, but it's a very tight timeline to make.
But you could, isn't it true that since we're adopting the rates as your presented option B, that's the one where, can't the notice be essentially written ahead of time, so that when we do have the special meeting, we're just adopting those rates, and yet the public will have had an opportunity to go into the detail prior to us having our special board meeting. So the worst case, we just wouldn't do it. But to do it, in other words, we don't want to massage the rates during this infrastructure. My intent, anyway, is not to massage the rates. The rates need to get moving. How we spend it, that's up to the Finance Committee, and that's up to the Infrastructure Committee. Whether we do the influence screens first, whether we pull something else in, that's up to the standing committees. But the rates support at least a volume of CIP and a volume of
So
stuff.
to move this forward, I would withdraw my motion, and I make a motion that we have a special meeting immediately following the joint committee meeting in order to have essentially this same item for setting the hearing date and sending out the Prop 218 notice and all of that's involved in that. Is there a second?
I second that.
So
if you need a second.
that motion is seconded.
Clarification, Madam
Yes,
President.
please.
So the same day or the 13th?
We would have to set the date. I meant to be saying within by the 16th if we can.
The 12th is not set in stone. We could have that the week earlier if you wanted to, right? I'm not sure. There's a lot of people that take off the week of the 4th of July, but I'm not, we could do it on Monday, or if we have a quorum of both of those, we could do it on the Friday or
Thursday or something.
after the 4th. Do it the 5th or the 6th.
Yeah, but we can, it is, yeah. We're just trying to figure out if we can schedule it. So immediately after is meaning before, so that this is all done before the 16th was the meaning of my motion.
Just be cognizant of the fact with Murphy's Law in effect.
Understand.
The bigger
Understand.
window we have, the better off we
But
are.
if we don't keep moving.
So we have the joint meeting on Monday the 9th, and we have a board meeting on the 10th. It would be my recommendation.
I like it.
11th or the 12th, any of those days. I know Fridays are problematic
Right.
scheduling around.
So you think the 9th would be good for a joint meeting? And you don't even have to attend it. And the 11th?
It's great for me.
And the 10th
Or in the 10th, yeah.
the next day.
The 10th.
Yeah, the 10th, 11th, or 12th, any of those days are fine.
Okay, so.
Oh, no, I have to pick up my CSA box on Wednesday. I can't be there on Wednesday.
Okay. So is there a motion on the board?
There is a motion on the floor. Yes.
The infrastructure vice chair will not be available between June 28th and July 10th.
Is the vice chair here?
Yes.
Is the vice chair wanting to?
Can we ask the vice chair if we can move ahead anyway?
Yeah, I don't know.
June 28th and July 10th. We could do it on the 10th, though, right?
10th? What is it? When are you not here? Evening of the 10th.
So you could do it on the 11th.
The 11th? Okay. I would accept that as a motion. We have the 11th and the 12th.
The 11th and the 12th?
The joint meeting on the 11th and a special meeting on the 12th.
I don't think that gives us time to properly agendize does it, Monique? I mean, we're going to be essentially preparing something, right, for that special meeting one day following? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
The committee would have to come in with recommendation, and it may be that.
And it can just be verbal. I mean, we can just put an agenda together, but that meeting will derive some direction from that meeting.
We also want to make sure the public has the time.
All we really have to do is post the agenda. We can bring the staff report to the meeting.
Got it.
Which
Let's
gives us
face
a
it,
couple
let's
more
say on
hours.
the 11th, there's no agreement on anything. We can always cancel the meeting.
Yep.
So I'm trying to be as.
No, I got you. I got you.
And I think if the public feels that they really have a stake in the
still
game.
have a problem. Yeah.
And they feel that they're really going to be watching over the dollars that are being spent and feel comfortable with that, I think we're going to have a very acceptable community. That's
Okay. So Wednesday the 11th is the joint committee meeting, and the 12th would be a special board meeting to consider setting the date for the hearing and approving the Prop 218 rate notice.
based upon option B, the beginning of September. Because I don't want to start saying, oh, we want to change this rate and we want to twist this. The activity of spending the money, if
I think
is different.
Well, and that's the discussion that we will have on those days. I think.
Okay. All right.
So.
You're ready
Yeah,
to
because
read
I
that
would
back.
like to make sure that we get the right motion. Ms. Madrid, I'm sure she got it right. I know. I said immediately after, but we were negotiating a friendly amendment, I think.
Here's what I have. President Rice moved to have a special meeting following the joint committee meeting to set a hearing, send the Prop 218 notice, and all that is necessary for the process.
That sounds
Then
right.
Below, I have the joint committee meeting will be July 11th, and the special meeting will be July 12th.
Okay, so I think that's appropriate, and that because that was the second
And that's the
of
second,
motion
okay.
that made that, and I
That's
accept that
acceptable.
amendment.
Okay.
So that is going to be the motion. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I just like know a specific time of day. Like 10 o'clock in the morning, I assume on the 11th, and maybe early afternoon the following day, or 10 o'clock in the morning on the 12th.
Let's do it later in the day on the Thursday so that they have more time to.
That's what I figured.
Right, I think early, and one of my committee members normally is 10 o'clock. If we can start it at 10 o'clock on the Wednesday, and maybe later on in the afternoon, maybe, I'm going to throw out 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the next day, so that there's a little more time between the two. I think we can.
Can you tell me the times again, please? I was looking at the
10
calendar.
10 a.m. on the Wednesday.
4-hour meeting starting at 10 o'clock.
At least one of my board members will be there.
And then 3 o'clock on the 11th.
Well, we can bring in
12th.
lunch. We can adjourn. In fact, it might be good for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
3
o'clock.
Okay,
on
so
the 12th.
July 11th at 10 a.m., July 12th at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that right? 10 a.m., yeah.
Let's have a roll call. Thank you for hanging with me on that.
President Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Berenger?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Sure.
Can we take a 2-minute break? Just 2 minutes and then go in 5. I'm seeing a 2-minute break. Let's just have a really, really quick one. We'll be back here at 4:35, according to the clock at the back of the room.
You know what? I'm always like holding it up and trying to beam it. Right there. Well, I guess it's not working.
Okay, yeah. I see you struggle with this, so I might do the same.
My power is not working.
Uh-oh.
No power.
My plug isn't.
Okay, I'm not.
We can only have another 10 minutes because otherwise my laptop will be dead. No, AGP's a hero. They got it covered. All right.
Thank you, Madam President and board members.
Let's make sure that we've got everybody's brain. Thank you. I could tell right away. Thank you.
I'm going to mention that, I think, if that's okay.
We need to wait and make sure that we got AG. It unplugged again. It unplugged again. There it is. It's on again.
When you get a chance.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I make a comment?
I do not mind if you, wait, let me know what it is. No.
Okay, it's on.
AGP, are we good? Are we back? Okay.
On the joint meeting on the 11th, my suggestion is that we don't have the oak here and we have it more open. And I do think it should be televised.
Okay, agreed.
Yes.
And you're going to be working with the two chairs are going to be working with the general manager to get that done. I think you've got the support of the board to have the joint, so I think we're good. Extra money that's going to be worth it.
Can I make a comment, please?
Yes, Director Farmer.
Yeah, I don't know if I alluded to this.
We did call the meeting back to order, folks.
Yeah, I don't know if I alluded to this previously, but I would like to make a comment with regard to all of the public comments that were made, earlier at this meeting. How inspiring it is to have such thoughtful and well-intentioned comments being made by the members of this community. They were all well thought out, deeply caring about the financial and I would say psychological future of this town. And it's really, to me, rather heartwarming, and it says a lot about, because as we know, the thing in radio, having been in radio for a long time, if you're getting one phone call, that means at least 100 people out there are feeling the same way. And so I know there's a lot of folks out there that feel the same way, that so many people got up and spoke, and it's all certainly food for thought for all of us on the board. And I want to thank everybody that came to the meeting and has so far spoken. It's been very, like I said, helpful and inspiring at the same way, at least to me.
Thank you, Director Farmer. All right, Mr. Gruber.
Thank you, Madam President and board members. Item 4A is public hearing to discuss and consider adoption resolution 172018 approving the preliminary CCSD budget for fiscal year 18-19. Just a couple highlights from my transmittal letter, and there are a few inconsistencies that you're going to see, and then Rudy and I will point those out regarding what's in the financial summary report and what's in the budget. Really quick, the attached 18-19 preliminary budget would authorize total revenue projections, expenditures, authorities, and the change for the water, wastewater, and general fund balance as shown. The 18-19 budget highlights for the preliminary budget is $11,681,498. It's broken into 5 sections, which include personal services, services and supply, capital outlay, debt services, and administrative cost. Under the budget summary, the district-wide revenues are projected to be projected to be at $11,768,286, with the expenditures projected to be at $11,681,498, which is a $86,788 surplus. Rudy will go over the different departments with you as far as the revenues, the expenditures, and where those funds are come from within each one of the departments. One thing I would like to comment, and we've had a lot of dialogue about capital improvements and the need for capital improvements, and I think in this budget, there's two main items within the wastewater department. That's the installation of the influence screen. We all know how important that is. And then also the handrails for the digesters. Those are going to be replaced. One thing I would like to point out within the water fund is there are significant things that the water department, tools that the water department has asked for that we've included in this budget, and we consider those capital items. One of the changes that we did do based on some of the recommendations from the Finance Committee is that we had $79,000 or thereabouts allocated for the purchase of a dump truck for the water department. We went ahead and we're going to show that as debt now instead of having all that money just spent up front. There is some additional explanation regarding the sustainable water facility that I'm going to need to go over with you when we get to the end of the presentation, just for consistency reasons. And we are, from a policy standpoint, going to need at some point in time to discuss this set-aside money, this mitigation money for the sustainable water facility. One thing also, there is a correction that I'd like to point out on the organizational chart on page 13, and if you go down and you don't have to go there necessarily, but it says positions that are eliminated due to limited resources. So this budget does not have a utility manager in it, and we'll have to consider that position in the future. The two collection system operators that were requested are not in there, and then the one clerical assistant full-time for the admin office is also not in there. And then it does not include the 3 firefighters because the Proposition 118 was not passed. One other thing, it says in notes for added and changed positions, these positions do not represent an increase in any salaries or benefits. They're just a reclassification of them for a restructuring, if you will, of the admin office to improve efficiencies and to broaden the roles that everybody within the office is taking on. Under that category, it shows a maintenance technician added 1 part-time position. That's not true. That was a recommendation that was made by the Finance Committee, and so Director Pearson hit it on the head. We spent about 4.5 hours going over the budget, and several recommendations were made. So we implemented those recommendations. If the full board wants to take them back out, then we can do that. But that part-time position for Carlos's department was $40,000. There was some dialogue at the last board meeting regarding some fire break work in an environmentally sensitive area, and we took that out at $40,000 also. And there were some other things based on the Finance Committee's recommendation that we took out. Few things we added, but overall it represented savings to the district. There's some things in the fire department that we removed, a couple items there. So some of these were pretty big ticket items. One with fire department was for the handheld radios and things like that. We're waiting for grant money on that. That was $50,000. And then Carlos's department was, $80,000. So those are real dollars. So with that, I'll let Rudy give his presentation, and then I would also like to thank Melissa, who's here, or maybe she's not here, for helping Rudy put this together. And again, there's some conversations that I need to have when we get towards the end on the sustainable water facility, and just some clarifications on how some of our bottom line balance was showed and how it's being showed now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hernandez. Thank you, Rudy.
Okay. Good. Again, Madam Mayor, members of the board, and our public, thank you for being here to go over the budget. So I'm just going to go over, Jerry he's covered a lot of areas already, so I'm just going to cover some areas that he hasn't covered, and this is one of them. You may recall on May 24th board meeting, the board did receive a copy of the budget, and at that time, staff indicated that you had what's called a balanced budget. I mean, all funds were in balance. Okay, that was on the May 24th. which was good and bad. Good in the sense that it's a balanced budget. Bad in the sense that you may recall there was like over $2 million in cuts that were made to balance the budget. And I think Madam President made a good comment where it's not really a good thing in terms of services that you have to sacrifice. And it's not really, in my opinion, showing the true services that are really needed to the public. Okay, so anyway, I just want to add to those comments. But anyway, so back on June 12th, as our general manager stated, there was a finance committee meeting that made some recommendations, and Jerry covered a lot of them. I'm going to briefly show them to you in just a few minutes. But the bottom line, after those changes were implemented from the finance committee, there are bottom line numbers changed. Okay, overall district-wide, yes, revenues do exceed expenditures by $86,000. However, when you look at individual funds, they have changed. So I'm going to go ahead and just show them up right now. If you look at our general fund, it's now showing a surplus of $140,514. The wastewater fund, as you can see, it's showing a deficit of $24,576. The water budget is projecting a surplus of $88,000, and our SWF operating fund is negative $117.93. So those are the current most numbers that we're presenting. And the last item is what our general manager, Jerry, indicated towards the end. He'll be elaborating some information on how that has changed. Okay, so any questions now, or do I just wait till the end? Or Okay, anyway, going on to the second page. Here's where I briefly these were the general fund recommendations that were made by the finance committee to staff on the meeting of June 12th. Okay, and as our general manager pointed out, the fire department did have a couple of reductions. One, of course, is that mobile and handheld radio equipment, $50,000, and there was a principal payment that was in the budget that was removed because we had already paid for that particular vehicle. So those add up roughly about $59,000, the fire department. And then, as our general manager also indicated, there was a part-time maintenance position that was in the initial budget that was removed for the $39,021. And then the $40,000 for the ground maintenance was also deducted. So those add up approximately to $80,000 between those two. So anyway, as I'd like to show what the fiscal impact of those reductions are, and they add up to $138,956. Okay, which results in an increase from the original budget was showing a general fund surplus of $1,558. And it's now has been changed to $140,000. So there you have all the detail explaining how it went from this number to that number. Okay, let's move on. And this here, what we thought we'd do, and again, as our general manager mentioned, one of our good employees, Melissa Bland, was the one that really put this document together. She did a fantastic job. But this basically is just in a nutshell how our fire department revenues line up to our expenditures. As you can see from the expenditure side, it's personnel services down to the administrative costs, and that grand total is $2,270,505. And as you can see, folks, revenues exceed that number. So this is our revenues and our expenditures for the fire department. And to the right, you'll note there's a brief picture on what the requested capital asset expenditures are for the fire department. Okay, so that's our fire department. Moving on. Here's our F&R, facilities and resources, pros budget, and as you can see, being the first one is a 644. That's what's that? We have facilities and resources. That's 644,000. As you can see, folks, up on the right-hand side, the revenues exceed that particular budget. Revenues projected are 724,579, and proposed expenditures are 644,99. Okay, so then we have our next one where it's just strictly supplies and services and admin costs. So and this is our pros budget. Okay, so that's kind of a quick presentation on these items. Moving on. Okay, then we have our administrative budget, and there was no changes made from the Finance Committee's recommendation. So this is status quo as you received it on May 24th. And here we have some, as Jerry pointed out earlier, we had our changes made for wastewater. We increased digester rails from 25,000 to 45,000, which when you see to the right, that's an increase of 20,000. And then we increased the funding for the GSI from 4,000 to 10,000, which is a $6,000 increase. So those two numbers add up to 26,000, okay? When you first got your budget on May 24th, it was showing a surplus of 1424. By adding the 26,000, that's how it nets out to a deficit of 24,576. So anyway, I'm just going to make a quick question, if you don't mind me. I know there was a lot of discussion regarding the rates and stuff like that. I listened what was going on, and this is probably the fund that's probably suffering the most, needs the most help, financially speaking. Okay, and then the next budget we have is the water fund. And the first line item is nothing more than a reclassification. It came up, the Stewart street tank repairs were 3,000. That they were at that time in the original budget, they were part of capital outlay, and the Finance Committee made a statement that the $3,000 should be moved from MNR, from capital outlay to MNR. But after that, our district engineer and myself got together, and we both concluded that not only should the Stewart Street tank be moved, but also the hot mix asphalt patches. We both agreed that that's not really a capital outlay item, so we just reclassified it to MNR. And then the Finance Committee also made a recommendation that we look at financing the truck. I believe there was some kind of dump truck. In the budget for capital outlay, there was $76,000 in it. And one idea came up, let's look into financing the pickup, and let's see what can happen. Okay, so we look at that, and the way it basically works when you refinance, when you finance a capital outlay, okay, the money that you receive from the loan, it counts as loan proceeds. So in this particular situation, because we needed $76,000, okay, obviously if we're going to finance the vehicle, you show that $76,000 as cash coming in additional cash flow from the loan. So if you look at your water fund, it shows $76,000 cash flow loan proceeds. Okay, so that's what that shows. Okay, but then because next year the plan is that we will have a new debt service. I think it's like about close to $13,000 for next year. And I think, as Alex pointed out earlier, okay, we're basically just spreading the cost out. Okay, so really to say, okay, we're getting $76,000 in loan proceeds, but don't forget we have to repay that back. So by the time we pay it back, we're not going to pay just $76,000 in principal. We're probably going to pay another $20,000 plus whatever in interest. So it's really costing us to borrow the money. So anyway, I just want to add that. And the fiscal impact, because we're not paying for the expenditure of the vehicle, we're instead borrowing the money in loan proceeds. It results in it going from a surplus of $24,895 to $88,443. Okay, this is just a snapshot at what it looks like now. And as you can see, folks, anyway, I'll just leave it at that. The capital outlay items are to the right. In the water budget, basically here's everything that we are requesting. There's a dump truck of $76,000.
I would like to just take a moment on this. The requested capital asset expenditures, there's quite a few things on this that Jason and his folks are getting that they need. The trailer-mounted vacuum extractor, the air compressor and jackhammer, the dump truck that Rudy talked about, replacement of the Lamert service lines, the replacement upgrades, water meters, $50,000. We're going to start we're phasing in the replacement of all our residential water meters. Finance Committee recommended that the GIS, that's a database system that we use for finding water lines and everything like that we give them what Bob originally asked for. We put that back in. valve replacement is really important part of, and then the rodeo grounds. That really is, you think, well, how can I replace the rodeo grounds pump station replacement for $15,000? You can't. But it's an old system. If something happens from an electrical standpoint or from a pump standpoint, after talking with Jason, we feel that $15,000 would be able to cover that. If you look on the CIP list, the rodeo grounds is something that we've talked about for many years that needs to be replaced. So you're not going to get it replaced for $15,000. But this is a pretty fairly aggressive CIP program for the water department. Now, if you look at all these things, they're interlinked to the CIP list for the water department, and they're changed. So the infrastructure committee and the finance committee and the budget process, it's all, and the board is all kind of flowing together, and that's how it's supposed to work. And so now these items right here, along with the two items from the wastewater department, which is the influence screen and the handrails, if you look at we'll give you an updated CIP list. If you look at those, they now show being accomplished in fiscal year 18-19. Now, if and when the rates are adopted, and we can project the revenues that we anticipate for the remainder of this fiscal year, then we'll sit down with the infrastructure committee. We'll say, okay, Jerry, on the CIP list, you got this. This needs to be done. What can you afford to do and what can you not afford to do? We'll adjust that CIP list accordingly to reflect the additional revenues coming in to be able to do more capital work. And so they're all independent of each other. And then obviously the finance committee would be involved in those extra revenues, coordinating with the infrastructure committee to make sure that, as somebody indicated earlier, and you indicated, Director Wharton, that I don't want to give you a blank check. I want to see how these monies are being spent. So I just wanted to interject here for a minute because it's a fluid process. If everything works the way it should be, the CIP list, the standing committees, the budget, all the numbers should work together, and they should all mirror each other. So thank you.
Okay, this is our SWF budget for operations, and you'll see, folks, our projected expenditures for next year are $1,021,287, and our projected revenues are $904. So the difference between those two makes up the deficit of $117,193. Now, I think this is the point where our general manager wants to talk a little bit about this is it, Jerry, the outlay that we spoke about.
Yeah. So if you look at, so as Rudy indicated, from an operational standpoint of $117,000, $193, we anticipate being able to significantly. And I know I've said this till, I've promised and everything. Well, we got a letter. I sent that on to the board that they acknowledge that they'll be willing to reduce our sampling. If you recall what the letter said. It said that we need to concur with Jeff Densmore, and that when we do operate the facility, that we would have to sample 1 month prior to starting the facility. That's all the groundwater sampling. That's all those expenses that Director Farmer brings up, and a lot of lab sampling. And then once we shut the system down, we would have to sample the groundwater for 3 months prior to see if the operation of that facility had any impact. So we're projecting, even with that $100,000 cost, still a deficit of $117,000. Now, as I indicated, we did hire a sustainable water facility operator. Even though that facility is not running, John Elchin and Jason, the water department, the wastewater department, they were all been spending their time on that facility. Now, going down to the sustainable water facility capital outlay expenditures, the services and supplies, that $175,000, and we can go to the individual budget and look at the line items. What does this include? So let's start with the $733,948. You can keep that slide up, Rudy.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
That's what we have left out of that $1 million. That's that terminology that we use about future mitigation, and it was defined very broadly by previous boards to litigation, mitigation relating to the pond, those types. So in the simplest terms, that's our net worth as far as the SWS is, and that's what we keep. That's the fund we keep going back to for mitigation measures like the closure plan, the swales, some of the hydrogeological work that Tim Cleeth did, and we're drawing that down. Okay, so we're wanting some policy direction on how far we want to draw that down. So if you look at the capital expenditures of $175,000 and you take it from that $733,948, that leaves the $558,948. That's committed to dollars. Those are real dollars. The 175 represents this. You approved a $104,000 contract with Cindy Cleveland for the additional consultation regarding takes. If you remember that, I think it was part of the May board meeting. That's $104,000. Then there's some miscellaneous fees in there, about $10,000 to maybe $20,000 for Rita Garcia to support her. Rita Garcia did our EIR when she was with RBF. She's now with Kimley Horn. And then the $50,000, there's $50,000, all three of these, that's for if we need to run the emergency, if we need to run the sustainable water facility, that we anticipate 2 months of operations, and the calculations for that to haul the brine, to truck it down to South County and have them dispose of it is the $50,000. So service and supplies from a capital standpoint is that $175,000. Now, I put a notice that due to administrative oversight, the capital outlay expenditures total was inflated by the inclusion of future year expenditures. And what we did is, when we originally, if you look at your budget, and we couldn't, when we changed this sheet, if we started changing the budget, everything's linked. I just want to note it in your budget. We had out of that net worth of that 733, we had $200,000 in there for future off-hauling. That was a capital expenditure. And after talking with staff, we don't know when that is going to be needed. Also, we've had talks with the infrastructure and the finance committee. The facilities that we have in place right now, although they're temporary by definition, there's 2 Baker tanks out there that we're using to empty the impoundment basin and blend with our wastewater. We've had several conversations with John Rocky, and I thought to myself, why are we proposing buying additional Baker tanks? Why are we proposing an additional piping and everything when we can use those? And really, would be part of the our OOMP and our part of a regular coastal development permit. Why can't we use the existing tanks that we have? What we'd be able to do, because of the capacity of them, is simply put a pump there and put them in and pump it into a truck. Now it's going to require a slight modification to our OOMP, which is our operation maintenance and management plan for the facility. But we're trying to really reduce the cost, and this is something we hear about at every meeting regarding the sustainable water facility. So the reduction of the sampling when the facility is not running of $100,000 a year is a really good start. And then instead of looking at a huge amount of capital cost in constructing, if you will, a new facility for brine disposal, what we've done is we're going to extend the lease of those tanks by another 6 months, which is going to cost us about $6,700. And also, I was asked, well, why can't that money be used towards the purchase price? The tanks are roughly about $70,000. We have these tanks from Rain for Rent. And if you recall, on the Bluebird pipeline, we were paying quite a bit on that pipeline, and I simply just called them up and said, how much would it cost to buy the pipe? And it was about $4,000 or $5,000. So what we'll probably want to do is purchase those tanks. They're all piped in. It makes sense. One-time capital cost. And then we're not looking at a huge amount of money for brine disposal. So we need to continue to look at ways to operate that facility in a more efficient manner. Now, hauling brine obviously is very expensive, but I just wanted to point out, and then I'll be quiet, I just wanted to point out there's inconsistencies with this right here and then what you're going to see in the budget as far as the sustainable water facility goes. So with that, I'll turn it over to...
Yeah, I just have one last comment. I think at the last Finance Committee, one of the issues that came up was our revenues for the Fund 39. Okay, staff did address it, and it's right there. The two big items, if you'll note, the SWF, it's the water-based residential. If you look at the budget, originally that was $305,000, okay, and we brought it down to $250,000. And what we did, initially when we started doing the budget, okay, these were the numbers that were in the current year's budget. It had $305,000 for that particular revenue item, and it had $504,000 for that line item. So at that point, we thought, okay, let's use it as a placeholder, okay, until we do further analysis, okay. And then I got together with Bob and Melissa, we all got together and we all concluded, okay, that realistically, it really should be both about $250,000. So that's what we did. We brought it down to what we feel will be the true numbers, not only for this fiscal year 17-18, but as well as 18-19 as well. Okay, but in doing so, that was part of the reason why it triggered the deficit. Okay, and also what we did to balance it out, well, not balance out, but to help reduce the deficit, we cut expenditures of $133,500. So that's how we brought it down to $117,000. Okay, so that explains that particular documents. And at this point, this kind of concludes my brief presentation, as I said I would make. And at this point, as the last page indicates, it doesn't indicate. There are questions. So we're here, I'm here, staff is here to answer any questions that the board may have.
First, we'll have questions and clarifications, and then we have public comment, and then...
Public comment and then questions?
Questions and then public
Okay,
comment, and then discussion.
I have just a couple quick questions. I think the Finance Committee didn't get, from the Infrastructure Committee, you didn't get to discuss the segmentation of the district. Mr. Gruber, you might remember that the Infrastructure Committee moved into this year, we hope, or 18-19, some valves or meters that would divide the district up so that if we have a leak, it's detected much earlier, and the Infrastructure Committee thought that that would save water and be a critical thing. So we moved that in as a high priority item, and I don't know if that's in this budget or if it was even considered.
It should have been included. What you're referring to is when we had that leak, the leak behind the Bluebird Hotel. In the CIP list, Bob has flow meters, if you will, on the different zones, and those flow meters would tell you if there was a particular break in that zone, so you could isolate an area. I'm going to have to go back and look at the budget. I know it's on the CIP list. I know David's got his up right now. I think the committee supported and endorsed putting that in the budget. We do have a surplus in the water budget, so if that inadvertently, we're going to make a note to ourselves, Rudy's going to write that down. If that inadvertently got not put in the budget, then if the board decides to pass this on a tentative basis or whatever, we need to re-include that amount because that was a recommendation. That's what the board supports. What Director Behringer is referring to, again, is it's a series of inline meters on our main lines for the different zones throughout the district. And if there was a leak, a substantial leak, like we had behind the Bluebird Hotel, those flow meters would indicate what zone the leak was in as opposed to us running around town trying to figure it out. The thought and the logic behind the recommendation from the Infrastructure Committee was simply this. We easily spent more time in lost water and pumping cost and electrical cost on that major leak than if we would have went ahead and just implemented these flow meters. So I'll have to go and look at the water department and see if it was included.
And the other quick question is, in the firefighters, what's the assumption that the
firefighters? At this point, as we all know, the parcel tax failed, and it's not included in the budget. So effective July 1st.
Is that an opportunity for us to comment on that? maybe President Rice, you can comment on what the Board of Supervisors had enacted regarding firefighting?
Yeah, I'd be
Please.
happy to. Yeah, the Board of Supervisors requested CAL FIRE do an assessment of the fire protection services provided by the by agencies in the unincorporated areas. I think there's 5 agencies they'll be looking at, and we've been requested to participate in that process. They're supposed to have and the general manager and fire chief and at least one board member, and that's something that we will have on the agenda probably in July to choose a board member to participate in that process. You may have seen the letter that came today, or you may not have. But we just need to make the decision whether or not we're going to participate. It's not required, but it is an assessment of the services that are provided here, and it seems like a smart idea, frankly. Other questions? Questions or comments? Because then we have public comment.
I have a comment
Okay.
on,
Yes.
Question or comment? We're doing questions right now.
okay, well then I have a question.
And I have a comment after direct, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Zone 2 through 7 transmission line, $50,000. Yes, it is.
So my question is, under the wastewater budget summary, and I really appreciate having this little handout here, although I was more referencing, and actually looking through what we were given here on the agenda packet. But so under wastewater budget summary, and it says here expenditures, $195,000 for the influence screen installation and the digester handrails. And obviously the influence screen, as we know, is like priority numero uno, and I don't want to get into why that is. But that's only, as Engineer Greshams explained to us at the infrastructure meeting, and I would imagine the folks at the finance meeting also know about this, that's only for the first 6 months of the coming fiscal year, and that we actually have some major expenses for the second half of the fiscal year. But it says here, with regard to this long list of expenditures for the wastewater facility, which will be anywhere between, let's say, around $850,000 to a little over $1 million. That's dependent on the proposed rate increase. So if we get the rate increase, we may be able to put some monies into the much-needed improvements and repairs at wastewater. If that doesn't happen, we don't get anything to speak of. And yet I'm somewhat frustrated, if I can just ask a question, would we be willing to maybe do some adjustment in funding for our emergency water facility? Since, expenses seem to continue there for something that isn't running, whereas something that we need 24/7, 365 is dependent upon a rate increase. That's my question/comment.
Okay. If I could, and Director Farmer, I want to make sure I'm hearing you properly. Am I hearing you say that, can we take funds from the sustainable water facility to pay for some of the wastewater needs? Is that what I'm hearing you say, or?
Well, I know we really can't do that, as some people have brought it to my attention, that we can't start moving funds around and that type of thing. I'm just concerned about the needs of the wastewater plant, first and foremost. And when I see, as I said here, that the capital expenditures barely, not even $200,000, whereas we're going to no doubt be spending more than that on this other facility that we have, I just find it rather frustrating.
Well, since this ties into the budget and capital, and I don't want to, because not an agenda item, it really does, is our next board meeting, we're going to have an opportunity, and the infrastructure had a presentation by PG&E. And what excites me about this is the first thing they're going to do is an assessment, then an audit, and then that type of thing if the board supports it. they're going to be looking at the entire, Director Farmer, they're going to be looking at the entire wastewater treatment plant, starting at the motor control center all the way through the whole facility. And what's really encouraging is many of the things on the CIP list are going to be encompassed into that. Now, say for an example, if the board decides to move forward with that process, and say for an example, if the wastewater treatment rates are successful and we start generating revenue, and we want to start taking that revenue and spending it on some of this laundry list, if you will, of capital improvement projects, we can take that money and essentially set it aside, build it up a little bit, and wait till the PG&E work is done. Look at grant opportunities with them. Look at low interest loans, state revolving funds. Look at everything, and then now take that money. And if there's matching share that's required, we can get a lot of the things done at the wastewater treatment plant that maybe we couldn't have done individually without partnering with them. So. Again, I right there with you on your frustration about the wastewater treatment plant. I really am. But I'm very, very excited about this opportunity with PG&E because I think it's going to enable us to get a significant amount of work done where we would be piecemealing things. We can take that extra revenue if we're successful in the Prop 218 for our wastewater rates and really partner with them and take it and address many of the issues at the wastewater treatment plant. So. I know it doesn't answer your question. I know you're frustrated, but.
I'd like, are there other questions on the budget? Otherwise, we're going to go to public comment. All right. Crosby Swartz, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Madam President, members of the board, I'm Crosby Swartz. I had a couple of questions. One related to a slide that we just saw. For the FWF operating funds, they show zero administrative costs. Obviously, there have to be administrative costs. How is that accounted for now, and could it be split off so that it shows up under the SWF budget? Next question. As I've pointed out before, it's possible that the SWF may have to be operated more than has been estimated and included in this budget. And it's not discretionary, really. If you have to do that, where does that money come from to pay for the hauling and disposal if it's not in the budget? Does it come out of the general fund? Or it could very easily happen at the end of the year if the rains are delayed or if the well levels are low. So it doesn't seem to be taken into account anywhere. I think it should be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and we will hopefully get you some answers. Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Jerry McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would like you to look at page 172 of your agenda, please. And I would like an explanation, not today, because it's almost 5:30.
What page, Matt?
72.
72 of your agenda.
Thank you.
I'd like you to look there because there's the expenditure that was not planned for in 2014. It wasn't planned for in 2015, 2016, 2017, but all of a sudden it's in your proposed fiscal budget, and it's $196,038 per year on hiring somebody to run the plant. $196,000 for this person to run the plant. That might be a little confusing in its maintenance and operations. Maybe you needed to get somebody who understands maintenance and operations. I don't know. But I've not heard any discussion from the board as to why we public should pay this amount annually on this plant. I have one other point to make, and I'd like you to look at pages 59, 64, and 68 of your agenda, or just go to administration, water and wastewater, those wonderful charts with all the numbers, Mr. Hernandez. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of footnotes. I want to know this an answer to this question, which I don't want today because I don't think you can do it today. The administration salary and wages from the 1st of July 2015 until the 1st of July 2018, 3 years, administration salary and wages are proposed to go up total 43%. That's a little higher than the cost of living increase. I want to know why. And the benefits go up 27%. Why? In water, the salaries go up and wages 36%, but the benefits went down 11%. Why? Wastewater salary and wages went up 42%, but the benefits went up only 12%. You know something? There's something screwy about this pie. I love pie charts. I think pie charts show you exactly if it's your favorite pie, maybe Bavarian apple torte, say. You get a certain slice if you work in a certain department. This data system is screwy because it never lets us public know how in the world did you decide, dear board, to approve a budget like this? How did the rates go? How did the rates correlate with how much you pay people? Again, I'm so pleased that someone has raised the question. And I know Finance Committee, excellent committee that it is taking this up. It's in their minutes. They will look at your mode of allocation of administrative costs. And I hope when you look at that, dear board, look at the wages and salaries in the administration and the benefits and explain them, please, to us public ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jerry McKinnon, followed by Tina Dickinson. Welcome.
Yeah, Jerry McKinnon again. I need to make an apology. I do not hear well. And so what I am asking may have been answered by some of the comments made by others. And so please pardon me. Now, I'm looking at the wastewater budget. The capital outlay of $195,000. And over on the other side, it shows requested capital asset expenditures 150 plus 45. Is that for the repair and maintenance of the wastewater plant?
Those are capital expenditures. The 150 is for the installation of the influence screen, and then the 45 is for the replacement of the digester rails on both the digesters. So those are both considered capital projects.
So that's the answer is yes.
Yes.
That's what we want to do to bring the wastewater plant up to operating, I mean, the way you want it to be.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that means then when I look over and take the grand total of expenditures and the grand total of revenues, we have a $24,576 shortfall. And I suppose that's what we want to do when we raise our rates, is to cover that $24,576. So when we take that and divide by the number of wastewater bills that are spent out, how much would that be per bill per year? And I don't know that figure. And that would have a direct reflection upon the rate of the increase in rates. And then when I take a look at the water, I see that there's a surplus of $88,043 between the expenditures and the revenue. So why do we need to raise water rates if we have that kind of a surplus? I don't know. I'm just asking a question.
It's a good question.
And
we'll
if
get
you
you
can
an
give
answer.
me answers
Yeah.
that will satisfy my question, well, then that's just fine. Now, when I take a look at the what's that other thing, that SWF budget? There's a shortfall there of $441,755. Is that because we want to raise the water rates to cover that shortfall? I don't know. Those are the kinds of questions that might be answered when you have the next discussion as to why we want to raise rates based upon the figures in the budget. Words are good things to have, but what follows the dollar sign in print is more important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Tina Dickinson. And then I have one last request to speak. Samuel Shalhoub.
Tina Dickinson. First of all, as I said at the May 24th meeting, if you need to set your priorities, you need to cut spending. All I've heard today, and all I've heard when we're talking about rates and rate increases and budget, all I hear is how much we need to spend, but I never hear where you make cuts. Any rational thinking person would decide what cuts are necessary and needed. Maybe they're not so much they're necessities. I would say first, look at Mr. Flores. He's been with us for over 3 years. What has he accomplished for this district? As far as I can tell, zip. He was hired to work on the CDP. We don't have a regular CDP. He was hired to look at the water licenses from the State Water Resources Control Board. We still don't have those. I think that you've got to look at where it is that you can cut in your budget so at least you can pay for the influence screen at the very least. And by the way, I was on the phone today with a firm in Michigan, Duprin Wastewater Technology, to find out, first of all, how much the influence screen that would, for the capacity of our wastewater treatment would be, and then to find out about installation. And believe me, it didn't come anywhere near $150,000. He said even if it took a week to install it, that whoever this district purchased it from would have someone, an engineer on site that should have been in the contract at least one time. And then maybe for a week you'd have a contractor. He actually said people at the wastewater treatment plant should be able to install it, but I don't know all of the intricacies that are involved there. But the highest, it was 40 to 50,000. That's what another consultant had mentioned to me too. So I find that to be kind of inflated, unless there's a lot more to it than I'm aware of. The other thing is the Department of Finance did an audit, and they said that you have not run the plant continuously as you had said you would in your application for 6 months to produce anywhere from 240 to 250 acre feet. So I don't know how you satisfy the Department of Finance or the DWR, Public Works, with what you said you were going to do and what you have not done. Mr. Handler said in his presentations that I've listened to 3 times, he said that there were no reserves in the emergency water supply system he referred to as the SWF. You just had up there 733,000, and it was $1 million. So I don't know why Mr. Handler was not given that information. That means that his report is not correct, based on that fact right there. The money is definitely going to the brackish water desal, and I think you really will have to put a pause on it if you want to get these other things accomplished. And your few days extra, while it may be look good for you on the protest, I don't think anybody's going to be impressed, and they will still be protesting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Samuel Shalhoub. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello again. Just for the record, I'm speaking as a community member and not as the board president. So my opinions here, both of the prior comment period, do not represent those of the Coast Unified School District Board of Trustees. Just a quick question is, as you're considering this budget, have we reflected on why there's not a reserve limit on the sewer fund? I think imposing a reserve limit on yourselves would just help mitigate the deficit spending. It just kind of keeps things in check. I know that there's probably no required percentage reserve on that fund that like the county or the state might impose, but perhaps your own analysis could provide maybe a 1 or 2% reserve to kind of, buoy that fund in the future once, I hope, the expenses and revenues gets balanced out so that everything's functioning properly. That would be really nice. Budget reserve, excellent mechanism to help you guys keep yourselves in check. Just my 2 cents on that. I hope you look to install that in your next budget. Probably won't approve in this current budget, but maybe for next year, I'd love to see a reserve limit across the board for all of the funds where there aren't any. Thank you very much.
Could you leave your 2 cents here with us? We need it. Thank you, Mr. Shalhoub. Sorry it's getting late. This is why we have 4-hour meetings and not longer. It gets worse. Director Pearson.
I think the Finance Committee did an excellent job of going through the budget and finding some places where we could cut and finding some places where we could make adjustments and stuff. I'm not totally satisfied with some of the areas, but I think as a preliminary budget for us to move forward on, I think it makes sense. Monique, help me out. Did we actually make a resolution at the Finance Committee that we recommended this? Or I recall that we did, right? Okay, so I think the Finance Committee has recommended that we adopt this. And so I would like to move that we adopt the budget as presented.
I would second that.
Moved by Director Pearson and seconded by Vice President Berenger to accept the preliminarily approved budget. And we're going to have discussion. I saw two people heading toward microphones over there at staff. Did you want to say something, Mr. Gruber?
Now I got to find my notes. Just on a few of the public comments.
Yes, I'd appreciate
the cost
that.
related to the
Thank you.
SWF is not just for the Sustainable Water Facility Chief Plant Operator. It's also for Melissa's time. She does all the reports. I think it's a very good point. There were some points brought up about inconsistencies over a 3-year period of time relating to salaries and benefits and those increases, and there seems to be some inconsistencies there in a disproportionate amount. So I think that the finance manager can look at those and report back to the board. I don't necessarily know that I wanted to hold up the budget process, but that's ultimately up to the board. Regarding Senator Flores, that's on the June 28th agenda. That's really a board policy decision whether they want to continue those services or not. His contract is for a 6-month period of time. Staff is not recommending an entire year based on the sensitivity related to the district's finances. I concur with the water and wastewater statements. I concur with, at some point in time, establishing a rate structure, if you will, that does enable us to have reserves set aside. I think that's a good idea. And I did write down a comment here regarding the audit. What Ms. Dickinson was referring to is the terms and conditions associated with the Prop 84. There are some internal controls that were supposed to be in place. We're submitting all the reports in time, but I need to get with the district engineer and make sure that we're abiding by the terms and conditions. And if there is language in there that we're supposed to run it and we're not, then is there something that we need to write to them or something? But I have that. So those are the things that I have, and I apologize. I probably missed just as many because there was a lot of good comments. So.
Vice President Berenger?
I just wanted to mention that I do think that the board, if we don't have a policy, in the past, we had too much reserve, I think, in a way, and we spent it inappropriately, or some previous boards. And I think that the policy says 35% of our budget, something like that, and we should look at it close. So we're 7 million. How big is this budget? 7 million? 11. So yeah, we need about 4 million, a little over 4 million in cash, and we only have 2, so or maybe 2.5. So we should be trying to build up that reserve.
Even just budgeting like $25,000 in a fiscal year would be at least a start.
Right, and I like maybe 2%, and I think 2% is way too small, but certain.
I mean, we got to start somewhere.
Yeah, certain amounts in each of the enterprises.
Yeah, well, Alex has some of that money trickling down at the bottom each year to get the reserves back up again, which I thought was very good. That's
For
what we
the,
need.
for the enterprise funds, we still have to do it for the.
those at least.
Yeah. I have, I'm going to keep these very brief, and there's some language in the resolution that I'm concerned about, and I'm going to address that right now so that you can be looking while I'm making the comments about the dollars. If you look at the resolution, I'm looking at the green sheeted one, so that I'm assuming that's the correct one to be working from. It says, "Now therefore be it resolved," middle of the page. The first page of the resolution. Yeah, where it says page 31. Now therefore be it resolved that the CCSD Board of Directors has reviewed the preliminary budget for this period and hereby finds that the budget is a sound plan for financing and expenditure control of required CCSD operations and services, and said budget is hereby adopted. Is that right? Because we're not adopting it today. We're making a preliminary. This is preliminary. We're not adopting this as the budget, are we?
You're adopting a preliminary budget.
Yeah, you can adopt a preliminary budget.
You have to adopt it before July 1st, or you have to make a final available, and there's a notice requirement.
Okay, so I'm concerned about the next, that be it further resolved, because frankly, there's some things in here that I had to work because I had to keep my own budget in place, and so I wasn't able to stay for the budget sections of the Finance Committee meeting. But I have some serious concerns, and then if we give the general manager we give him the power to temporarily suspend expenditure of funds within the adopted budget if the suspension is necessary, or there's it's not a blank check, but he doesn't have to come to us if he's going to go outside the budget, which I think is one of the constraints that is an important constraint, unless I'm misunderstanding, because legalese.
He can suspend the budget. He can't spend. It's a pure suspension of the budget if he doesn't think we have enough resources.
I just need clarity so
that's
that
from
I
an
understand
expenditure standpoint. In other words, if we get
I'm
into
not sign it unless I understand it.
we get into a situation where we did before, where we were waiting on that Prop 84 money, and we were coming across some pretty hard times, and I said, that's it. We're not buying anything else, spending any money. I think that's really what that's referring to.
So you can stop spending as opposed to suspend the approval of the budget and then spend more.
Yes, ma'am. That's what my interpretation of it means. In other words, it's not. I have no authority outside
what's
to
in
be
the
able
budget.
to spend.
And if it's in the budget that we're adopting now, because it's preliminary, that does give him the authority to spend it, right?
Well, that's not how I read it.
Okay, so can you please help me
way.
clarify? Because that's kind of why I wanted to do a preliminary as opposed to adopting it today and then doing adjustments through the year.
Well, what words are particularly troubling to you?
All of them. We're adopting a preliminary budget as opposed to adopting a final.
So there's some expenditures that are listed here that I'm concerned that I don't want to give the authority to spend because they're not correct in some way. Like there's some things that you said that you're pulling out that are still in here. So I just want to make sure that we have clarity on that. And one specific one, I'm looking at page 69 of the preliminary budget, operating and outlay budget for water. That the debt service went from $6,800 last year to $19,000. I would like to know what that's for.
What page is it?
Page 69.
Yeah, that's correct.
So that's the dump truck and then the truck that we bought last year or whatever that was.
We fund our vehicles through usually a five-year financing, and then we incorporate the cost of that into their operating budget as a line item. So if the payments are $500 a month, you'll see $6,000 for an expenditure. the Finance Committee recommended on the dump truck that we finance that also. So I think the two, it would have been better if it was broken out. I think maybe one for dump truck, one for vehicle, but that's what the two are combined.
Okay. The other thing that really is bothersome to me, and this may be something that the Finance Committee looked at when I wasn't there, the Parks and Rec Department, essentially the franchise fee is being passed through the Parks and Rec, and I think that we had said let's use it for the East Ranch Park development during last budget year. But I don't think that going forward, the franchise fee was planned to go through, because that's the only revenue source for Parks and Rec, and it goes. And if you look there's no personnel, there's $21,000 in service and supplies, and then there's the administrative overhead costs. So basically, it's a pass through of the franchise fee through the Parks and Rec. But that's just pencil of, like, why are we doing that? I mean, we get that franchise fee for a reason. Let's be clear about what we should be spending on instead of just a pass through to admin.
I agree. And that 21 that you're referring to was based on the recommendation from the Pros Commission for under services for future work of civil design studios out of here in Cambria to start on the phase 2 of the park project. So
and that's going to take $50,000 of admin overhead?
No, I think the admin overhead is everything else related to our time, our involvement in assisting Carlos with the ranch and the assessments and things like that. So there's not a great deal. There's at least $50,000 in our administrative time in supporting of that department. But
why aren't we funding it from property tax instead of the franchise fee?
That's a good policy question. Last year was the first time that we took the franchise fee for Mission Country Disposal and used it for that, and that was for a capital project. That was to pay for phase 1.
And we helped cover the extra couple of months for the firefighters with it too, right?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
That was the plan, right?
So the question is if it didn't come from there, it would come from general fund. So those are really the only two sources for that department.
So that's a policy that maybe the Finance Committee can look at of what we do with the franchise fees, because that could be some money, since it comes in every year. That could be some money that we do set specifically to say take care of the dog park, or we set specifically to do X, Y, or Z, like keep the trash cans cleaned up, or whatever makes sense to do with it.
Or build our reserves.
Or build reserves. There's another example. Okay, thank you. That's helpful, and I'm not going to go into any of the other detail. I'm still feeling a little bit concerned, just as I am with the rates, that we haven't clearly described what the benefits are to the community of some of the things that we want to be doing, and I think that's really important, especially right now. We really need to have that clarity, and I think that with the Infrastructure Committee looking at the infrastructure projects, and with the Finance Committee taking a close look both at the admin overhead and some of the financial policies, that we are going to get things straightened out. This is probably the most hopeful budget in terms of revenues and expenditures, since there's a lot of zeros on lines that shouldn't probably be zeros. I mean, if you say I'm going to pay, I mean, there's one thing that you eliminated from the budget that's a debt service amount. You can't not pay a debt.
No, the debt service that we eliminated was that was for the fire department. That was a recommendation by the Finance Committee.
No, it wasn't. Let me find what I'm talking about, because that was, if you look at the part where you listed all of the things, like Ms. Dickinson said that we didn't list what cuts we have. We didn't make any cuts, but really you put $2 million of cuts. Mm-hmm. Here, I'm trying to find the page. Sorry for my
funded for CIP.
Here it is. It
For
says,
wastewater.
says Water Department, interest in, I'm on page 39. Sorry, I'm getting used to trying to do this electronically instead of by paper. I'm looking at page 39. And if you look at that top box, number 5 says interest on City National Bank loan
What page? 39?
and
In
principal.
the budget?
Page 39,
Let me go there.
the top box, Water Operating Fund is the page I'm looking at. I must be in a different version than
You look at
everybody
the
else
water
is looking
budget,
at. I'm looking at the list of things that you cut from the budget.
Oh, okay.
There's an item on the Water Operating Fund that says interest on City National Bank loan, 36. Thank you very much, Director Wharton.
Okay.
And then it says principal on City National Bank loan.
Madam President, what happened is that that was more a reclassification, and there wasn't really what I would say eliminated. It was reclassified from supplies and services to debt service. So
Okay.
it was just a reclassification.
So it's not an indication that we're not going to pay some?
No, ma'am. No.
Okay. Thank you. That's a very helpful thing for me to know. And so I just want to get this stuff cleaned up, that with being optimistic about not having as many expenses as we kind of know there's going to be. It's troubling. Yes?
I'm just trying to remember.
I know
if
it's
there's
been a
motion
while.
on the
I just
floor.
really, the budget is one of the ways that we give authority and place limitations on the general manager.
Right.
This is an important item.
Right, I agree.
And that's why, and I know everybody's aware of that, but that's why I want to take the time on some of these things. It's important also to get it right. I don't want to be approving something that has problems in it, because we could approve something that gives the general manager authority to spend money that we are not ever going to see. That's not good. So that's why I think it's important that it's right, and I appreciate the Finance Committee looked into it. This is the first time we've had a standing committee. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this year as we go through the year and see what the budget adjustments happen. And with that, I will hold the rest of what I have as concerns, because I know that they will be addressed as we go through the fiscal year. And I feel strongly that our chair of the Finance Committee will make sure that we stay on target.
Yeah, we have 2 months to get a final, right?
I was going to add that. Yes, we do.
So we
Okay.
have 2 months to make adjustments
Good.
and get it exactly right.
Which it won't be exactly ever, but close would be good. And this is much closer, I think, than we've ever seen, especially with a balanced. There's a lot of work that went in. Thank you. I think unless there's other further discussion, we could take a vote.
Madam President, just to clarify, that
Yes.
your motion was to adopt Resolution 17, 2018, which adopts the budget.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to
consider
make
that. Can we consider that an amendment to the motion to use those words?
Sure.
That's how we adopted.
Sure.
And it is, I'm sorry to be parsing, but it's adopting the preliminary budget.
Right, it's a preliminary budget which serves as your operating budget until you adopt your final budget,
Thank you.
which you have to do between now and September 1st.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarity. Sorry for the confusion. English major.
Madam President?
Yes.
Can I make one brief
Director
comment?
Farmer.
Yes, thank you.
Should I put the timer on?
No. I just want to make a comment. For those of you that haven't had the opportunity to attend any of the any of the standing committee meetings, especially the Finance Committee, between the two directors and the three members of the community, these people have done their due diligence. They're really working hard to make sure that the finances are in as much order as possible, and that the spending of the ratepayers' money is done, like I say, as responsibly and efficiently as possible. I just want the community to know that no matter how frustrated you may be feeling, and I think somebody already alluded to this, the efforts being made by this board and the standing committees certainly is far supersedes what's been done in the past. And I would hope that in some fashion or another, the people would have some understanding of that and have faith that especially the Finance Committee is doing the best that they possibly can. Thank you.
And I think that standing committees are a reflection of what the community has asked for. So thanks to them for that, too. I think we can call the question. Did you have something else? Okay. So we have the motion. Yes?
Yes. Director Pearson?
Aye.
Vice President Berenger?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Abstain.
President Rice?
Aye. The vote is 4-0 to 1 abstention. The preliminary budget is passed. Thank you for your patience and your time, those of you who are still sitting here.
Madam President,
Yes?
I'm sorry to interject.
Mr. Carmel.
We just need to confirm that it's our intention to address the final budget at the regular August meeting, because we have to send notice out tomorrow or Monday.
Yes, please.
All right.
I think that's, is there any objection to that at the August meeting?
August 23rd.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I think we are adjourned. See you next Thursday. Same bat time, same bat channel.